Plus, Ultra presents The Grey Lodge, Friday Night Gnostic Mass, Ghost Month in Review on Necromancy and Ghost Veneration. Arc Null. I'm Jin the Ninja at Wukong Reborn. I host a show called Threshold Saints. Obviously, everyone who is who is on the panel of this is our meta magicians roundtable as we call it. Everyone who's been on the show is also a co-host on Threshold Saints as well as um, a big part of what the other show is. So I just want to shout everybody out. Obviously, this was a bit impromptu. Usually, I give it at least a couple days before. Uh, I announce it in a couple days, but tonight was just, it is Ghost Month. Everybody's kind of exhausted. Everybody's schedule has changed, and we're just, we're in flux. So we're just trying it out. So I want to shout out my the main dude, at least in terms of just episodes recorded, and also my close friend is at Solar Exile. You can follow him. He's a Zog bro, as well as a contemporary left hand path practitioner. Eros to Ethos, who had just had an episode drop on my show, Crimson Grimoire Part One. Part Two will air this week. Um, whatever week it is. And of course, Seth Bibliomancer. I don't know if he's coming, but I saw like the title card and the post. So shout out Seth. Him and Joshua the Branch have an upcoming episode on the have an upcoming episode on my show, which is a part two to their first part, which is on Dark Souls, and then we have an episode coming up on Elden Rings. And of course, we have my little Naga, Dawnlander, Sunrise Coast. Of course, he is our APC bro, as well as like we call him our uh, boy genius at math boy genius. He's kind of exploring some like very esoteric Hyperborean ideas. And of course, CJ. So CJ obviously and I have been friends for like a year and a half. We were largely Instagram friends, IG friends, and he's obviously been on the show twice. But he has also an episode coming up, I think. Maybe not. But anyways, he's had 3 episodes, I think, on my show. So he's coming. He'll make it if he can make it, and hopefully he will, because this is kind of his topic in terms of necromancy, and I want to ask him some questions about his coyote medicine that he like black magic medicine, but bad medicine. We'll call it coyote bad medicine that he gets up to. As the Chinese one on the panel, at least Wei Xin, I feel like I can talk for at least an hour on ghost Qingming and its associated practices and maybe some Taoist sorcery and necromancy. I want to shout out, of course, to our Grey Lodge group chat, which is it's really not an extension of the show in the sense that it is an extension of the show. So let me say that. I'm wrong to say that it isn't. It is an extension of the shows, but it's also where this show, Grey Lodge, came from. It started as a group chat of magicians, a book club. That's what we used to do, host spaces on different books. We actually started out, I think we started with the Thomas Cleary book on Taoism. So that might have been our first or second book, but I just remember that it kind of is like a full circle. So if you look at our spaces from last year, last August, last Ghost Month, we were talking about very different things. Meta magic, Hyperborea, all of those things, of course, I'm still very interested in, and they've become very timely. I'm looking at the views. It's like I'm getting a little nervous, but that's okay. It's good. It's good. So we were talking about different things, and now we've sort of returned with a V to sort of practical magic. Not practical magic in the sense of like you can't necessarily listen to the show and be like, or the show and say, oh, okay, I can follow this step by step ritual guide to, raise the ancestors or summon zombies or whatever. But I think you'll have a good idea of like a group of people who are not armchair magicians, who are maybe speculative in their outlook of how they articulate it. Particularly me, I tend to go very speculative because obviously I'm a Tantra bro, Vajrayana bro. I try and, keep everyone's collective karma at true neutral, as what we like to say, or chaotic neutral is what the more updated way I've been kind of saying it. But let me also shout out some of those people from the chat, which is Cassandra, of course. She had an amazing, very well received episode on Threshold Saints. I can't even remember what I even called it now. I'm so sorry, Cassandra. Anyways, it's a great episode. If you look for it, it's episode 113. So obviously, I gave Cassandra a very magic, very kabbalistic number, of course, and that is largely what we discussed was Kabbalah, astrology, reality, and just sort of our place in it. And so I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of all my episodes, to be honest. I feel like the show has evolved a lot and I've evolved a lot. And so everybody can check out Cassandra. She has her own Etsy store, which is kind of booming. And so, yeah, fuck yeah. And also her channel, which is Spotless Mind Tarot. Everybody should check that out and follow her on IG at Spotless Mind. So, yeah, there you go. And then, of course, I'll shout out Vanessa, Truth and Dies. Um, she hasn't been around as much. She said she's really busy with dying and not dying, but dying for her store, Truth and Dies. So people can check out Vanessa at Truth and Dies on IG and Etsy. And just everybody else from the lodge. It's been really cool. We're kind of, I like to joke. We're like we always do it subtly, especially like Solsky and I. Like we keep everything we will do like little niner jokes or we'll do like very transgressive kind of like insider K-ball jokes. But the truth is like I do kind of like some of that material. Maybe we'll cover that eventually. It's been sort of discussed on the channels, on the back channels, to do maybe a book club on Tenebrous Satanism. It's not what it sounds like, and it's actually a lot more interesting than I think people would. Hey, John, what's up? Yeah, so I think it'll be an episode on Tenebrous Satanism. There's a book that we could do for book club. I think that might be really cool. Temples of Enterprise, Michael Hudson will continue, so there will be two more episodes as promised. I just because I have to work around everyone's schedule, and obviously, the show is a group show. It's not the Gin Hour. If I wanted the Gin Hour, I just go record on Threshold Saints. So basically, am I just have to be flexible and flow with, as John said, flow with the situation. So, we're just going with it, and everybody's lives are unpredictable, and we're in like a crazy smoky time. Like not just Ghost Month, but It's interesting to me that Ghost Month coincides with an eclipse, with Ketu, Neptune, some activity there. As if you've listened to the show or listened to Threshold Saints, you have definitely heard me discuss the properties of Neptune as related to Ketu being the smoky palace of the mind, a kind of bardo or like corpse ground or the Mahas Mashana at the end of the world. Certainly in Kabbalah, we could say Hokmah is where the flesh no longer is. It's like where it's no longer important. We are strictly in the spiritual, in the spirit body, but we are still we're still subject to the three worlds. At that point, we're not liberated or ejected from hyperspace or even at death. So we have to kind of bring it back. We have to bring Hokmah, bring those metallic flux, the aggregates of the dead words, all the stuff that exists there, the memories of everything from civilizations past, Hyperborea, Redux. We have to kind of bring that back into synthesis, and we have to into Binah, but not fully into Binah because we don't worship the body either. It's a synthesis, where it's a synthetic aeon. So that's kind of my ideas of like where we're at in the for Ghost Month for Qingming. So even though I'm saying we're going to discuss necromancy and ghost veneration, which we are, of course, but um, it's also going to be. I just think that approaching it from a middle path perspective is probably the best and most interesting. Of course, we're a middle path group in general, a little left-hand path, I would say, but middle we try and orient ourselves to the middle path. Obviously, magic is a kind of left-hand path endeavor in some ways, in some definitions, particularly in mine. Everything we say is speculative. We come together on the aether wave. I used to say on the app called X, transcending space and time, but we're still transcending space and time because we live all over North America, and like some people from the group and the lodge, they live all over the world. Got multiple members from Japan. We've got multiple members from from Europe, from all over. And shout out Frau Blucher. So awesome to see. Thank you so much. A great, supportive, beautiful writer on Twitter, and just like a supportive friend, and like definitely a friend of the lodge, and also a member of the lodge. And so that's how the show has grown. And I it's not like it's a big show or anything, but, like, sometimes the numbers can be very intimidating, and I'm proud of everything that we've done, as gonzo and crazy as it has been at times. I think it's been generative and productive, and, we've accomplished a lot. Like, we've talked a lot about ideas that 2 years ago seemed like absolutely insane, like Hapaborea, like Aetherpunk, like, all the other series that we've done, which is considerable. And, it's like people have not even really totally caught up to the kind of, meta mythology that we constructed. And it's, ever evolving, ever flowing, ever fluid, ever versatile, ever it's like, try and keep it malleable, very like Aeon of Quicksilver, Quicksilver Surfers, as I used to say. So let's talk about Qingming a little bit. So obviously, as I said, it's an impromptu space. It's not even a speculative anthropology; it's a magic space. So I didn't exactly do. We didn't read a book, or I didn't read several books, which is usually what I would do for speculative anthropologies and magic. But I think, as I said, I think I can do at least an hour. If I have to do it solo dolo, I can do it. So, Qingming, it means the great brightness month, month of great brightness, because the gates to the underworld are open and the ancestors can return to the earth. So, what the diaspora does is they often gather at Chinese cemeteries, and they'll do something called tomb sweeping, which is where you basically clean off the gravestones or the name markers for the ancestors if they are buried there, and you present them with food offerings. And usually, this takes place if you're doing it really traditionally, you'll do it over the course of 3 days, culminating in fireworks or um, various ghost rites depending on the family. Sometimes the spirits need pacification. This is obviously not as common anymore, but into places like Thailand, Taiwan, Hong Kong, to a degree, and also southern China, yeah, you'll see people doing these kinds of ritual ghost activities, especially for pacification of the ancestors if you've done something to upset them. In terms of wandering ghosts, yes, this is also a time for them because obviously you want them, well, at least in the Chinese ideology or cosmology, you want them to return to the underworld or go to the underworld so they can be, and this it's not quite the same as like a Judeo-Christian idea of hell, right? It's a more Buddhist influence idea of hell, but it's also Taoist and bureaucratic, so a little confusion as well. The souls would go down to hell, and they would be judged in by King Yama or one of his administrators. See, the Chinese, heaven in the Chinese cosmology is very bureaucratic, and hell is part of the heavenly bureaucracy. So King Yama is subject, of course, to the Jade Emperor or to the Buddha, in both really, but the Buddha is really the governing force, and the Jade Emperor is sort of the de facto ruling head. So Yama will look up their name in the Book of the Dead or Book of Names, depending on the story, and he will judge the or send the soul to their end accordingly. So the in obviously, if you've watched Big Trouble in Little China, you'll hear, and there's obviously an episode on Threshold Saints all about that, like a review, I'll call a review of that very film. So you can go listen to that. But um, they say their Chinese people have a lot of hells. That's true. But so Buddhism has a lot of hells too. So there are nine hot hells and nine cold hells. And pretty much this idea is mimicked or replicated in, we'll call it more folk or not inherently like, yeah, it's like Chinese cosmology. We'll just call it Taoist cosmology. So, well, okay, so this is a good question. Frau Blucher asks, there is. So there is, but are they conceptual hells? Are they real? Are they places the soul goes? Is it something a projection of the mind? These are all questions that a lot of Buddhists and like Chinese kind of like Taoist thinkers have asked. It's a fair question. And especially like if we're looking on the timeline, the question is also how quote unquote, I don't even like this word, but how air quotes superstitious kind of like the evolved religious practitioner should be. So obviously in magical terms, as a sorcerer on the carnal ground, as I like to say, um, it's magic is real. Magic is motherfucking real. So is hell real? Sure. Are there spirits that dwell there? Sure. Is Bardo real? Yes. Is that a transitional state of the body? Yes. We go there, but who are we when we go there? Are we ourselves? Is there an essential part of us that goes there? Buddhism would say there might be, but it after you sort of come back into like a samsaric reincarnation, an incarnation of the body. Of course, you can be reincarnated. Interestingly, you can be reincarnated on the Bardo. A lot of people don't know this. You can be reincarnated as a ghost, as a preta, as a Vitali, a vampire, a ghoul, a Bhuta, all of those things. Absolutely. It depends on your nature and your karmas that you create right here and now. And a lot of the karmas that, people talk about karmas from like 20 million lifetimes ago, but the important thing about karma is what we can control right now, of course. So start with your own mind, as I like to say. So basically, yeah, there's a lot of hells. So the hell's gates open up to certain spirits. So not all spirits are allowed to come out and party with the humans. But and so there are also ghost cops. So we've talked a little bit about them, I think, maybe in the past. My favorite, there's so Chinese has a lot of deities in the ghost realm or the hell realms. Obviously, as I said, this is part of the heavenly bureaucracy. So they are hell gods, but they are not hell gods in the Judeo Christian sense where they're strictly out to punish you or strictly out to torture spirits or anything like that, or they're not like ontologically evil. They simply exist to populate the hell realm with order. So my favorite among them is the two spirits, and I'll pull up a picture in a second. Maybe when Eros pops in, I'll let her speak for a bit, and like I'll find one. I've got quite a few. Anyways, so my favorite group of hell gods, or my favorite two, it's really a pair. It's called heibai wuchang. So this actually is a really interesting pair. It means one way to translate their names is white uncle and black uncle of impermanence. So they are, as you can see, there's a Buddhist or Taoist sort of, or both flavor to them. And sometimes they're depicted as a man and a woman, as a couple. Sometimes they're depicted as sworn brothers. Sometimes they're depicted as more than sworn brothers, but it's different. It depends on the diaspora. So like Hokkien people, Cantonese people, Hainanese people, they understand it a little differently, like each one. And there's regional differences too. It's not just strictly related to ethnicity. But anyways, they were actual people, at least is how it's narrated. They were like a seventh and eighth century scholar scholars or bureaucrats are applying for the famous or infamous Chinese civil service exam. And they were kind of scammed, both of them, in different ways. Sort of wrongly accused of cheating, wrongly accused of not like scoring, getting bad remarks or whatever it is, but they were both like exceptional. And so they inevitably, as the very Chinese fatalistic way of thinking, they both committed suicide and not together because they didn't exist at the exact same time. But then they went to the underworld and they were judged by Yama, and he said, well, actually, you guys are quite exceptional. Exceptional in your mind, and you have accumulated enough good karma that you actually can work for me. This is very common in Taoist cosmology, is that they'll be sort of employed by the bureaucrats of whatever place the spirits end up. So they get elevated. So the heibai wuchang, they become elevated, and they um, become hellcops basically, and so they gain magic powers, if you want to call it that, or spiritual powers. And but in popular folk Taoism, especially like in Singapore and Taiwan and southern China to a degree, they are actually propitiated mostly for like 40, for money, for winning the lottery, for curing sickness, and also for exorcism. Now you might think, why are ghost gods? That's what they are, right? Because they are formerly human spirits. If we go by the mythology, they're formerly human spirits who have become deities, and they actually have different functions, like each of them, but they're very complementary. It's very much like the Taoist yin yang. I always get the hiccups when I have to do this alone. It's a little bit of nerves, right? Anyways, so the white brother, let me just say this first. The white brother, he wields a fan, a feather fan, and on his hat is often written, will peace to the world and blessings to the virtuous. So those who do good acts in this world. And the black brother, he wields chains like shackles. And so you'll see him like with chains. And so that obviously has a magical function as well. But his hat often says, sometimes it's not his hat, sometimes he wields like a placard or like a disciplinarian's. It's like this ruyi. It's like a sort of ruler scepter kind of thing that, and there's an inscription on it. And the magistrates in China used to use them. So it would say punishment to the wicked. So this doesn't necessarily even mean humans. It actually refers to ghosts. So that's again referring to their function as exorcist gods. They are exorcist gods in the way that they will capture spirits who've escaped from the lower hells. So obviously, ghosts who just live in the ghost world, you can live in the ghost world, and if you've ever seen the anime Bleach, it's somewhat similar to this. It is somewhat similar to this, is that the ghosts kind of go into the city that is like a reflective of the human world. There's also a great Hong Kong film by the Pong brothers, who are Thai Chinese. I don't know if they're twins, but they're two brothers, and they have directed a lot of Hong Kong Cantonese language films. I don't know their current output, but they've also directed Thai films. And so they have this film called Recycle. So Recycle basically shows the main character, who's a novelist, interesting, and she goes into the ghost world, and it looks like a decayed Hong Kong. Like it looks like Hong Kong if Hong Kong had been hit by like a nuclear blast and basically was uninhabited and full of ghosts. So that is kind of the idea, except it's not necessarily as decayed, but obviously the ghost worlds have a decaying function. That is like what they are, right? Like they are in the current of decay. So that's why it's not good to necessarily, well, CJ might disagree if he comes, but that's why sometimes necromancy can be very dangerous, because it actually subjects the body to the time of the underworld. Time moves differently in the underworld. Spirits have certain amounts of days that they have to exist in the spiritual worlds, if until their future rebirth, whatever that may be. So back to the ghost gods. So the ghost gods are always traveling on Earth. That's kind of their function. Is they go and arrest spirits all the time, and they also, they will bless people, especially White Brother, but Black Brother can do that too. He can protect people, and especially sometimes that's a very important function. And the White Brother gives people boons, or but only people who are very virtuous. That's kind of the rule. The Black Brother is kind of more true neutral or chaotic neutral, and the White Brother is definitely more orderly good or whatever. Like, he's very he's like he it's not necessarily good order as in like, the D&D sense, but it's like people who are pious and like, don't seek to harm other people and try and, like, be virtuous in the world and uphold certain kinds of ethical concerns. So, that's obviously one. Yeah, that so they will punish people, and they are often invoked in mediumship rituals. This is very popular in Singapore. They're very popular deities, and Malaysia as well, of course. It's very interconnected sort of, continuity of Daoism, and so they will be invoked, as I said, for healing, for protection, for blessing, and but particularly for telling the future in terms of, winning, lottery numbers. Very popular. But they also can be employed as personal deities and protectors against ghosts. So if you're venerating a lot of like regular spirits or kumantom or whatever it is, child ghosts, fetal ghosts, all of that, they can be very. Sometimes people, the Taoist priests or the fasher that has like the that is practicing the necromancy, they will be particular devotees of heibai wuchang. So it's like a way to resolve some of the tensions of heaven and earth and hell or whatever you want to call it. But to say heaven and earth is not incorrect because they actually represent the earth is kind of like a hell realm in the Chinese thinking. Not a hell realm, but it's a lower realm, very much like K-ball. We live in Ossia. We can, of course, aspire higher. We can climb the tree higher. We can clarify the light so it becomes of a greater quality. Yeah, and that's the same in Buddhism and Taoism, of course, as well, especially in Tantra. But if we're talking about what Earth is often carnal ground, right? I used to say this all the time. The world is both a carnal ground and a garden. So in Chinese cosmology, they would say the earth is a carnal ground and a kingdom. Obviously, very Malkuth, right? So the kingdom is the realm of man, but the ghosts are basically impermanent and they exist everywhere. They permeate through matter, right? Because they're spiritual bodies only. Relating again to Ketu and Neptune, which is interesting in relation to Ghost Month. So Heibai Wutong can also hunt down spirits of the ghosts who escape the lower hells. Sometimes these are very dangerous spirits. Sometimes these are spirits that hurt people. Sometimes they are spirits that kill people. Like I'm saying from a Chinese perspective, this is very true. Whether people listening believe it or not, it doesn't matter. It's like part of the sort of greater heaven cosmology, right? So they can do this. So Black Brother has his shackles, as I said. So he will shackle the ghosts magically. So the often what you'll see if they're depicted in video games or in anime or TV shows, and there are quite a few that have them because they're very popular. They can also be, as I said, a romantic pairing, and and especially in manga, they are often not an opposite sex pairing. So I just want to say that I'm not trying to be funny or anything. I'm giving it context. But in TV like series, like for TVB, there's a couple of different series, one from Singapore and one from Hong Kong. They are depicted as like a man and a woman. So again, it's always flexible. There's always like a fluidity in how the Chinese sort of perceive the mythology. But so the sort of chains of Yama, the chains of karma, that's really what they are. The chains of karma that bind all of us in a way, they will rise up from these like cracks in the earth, like these abyssal sort of crevices, and they will like shackle the evil spirit. And what White Brother does is he will flick his fan and it'll sort of purify with like luminous, I guess it's sort of like ghost. holy ghost energy, I guess, and he'll purify the evil spirits or the evil miasma as it exists from the demon or from the spirit. So, or the ghost, or sometimes they do it to people. So this is if you've seen the film Rigor Mortis. Again, this was the first episode of Threshold Saints is about rigor mortis, the Chinese Hong Kong film. I can't remember what year it's from. I think 2012. Maybe 2013. I can't really remember, but it's one of those times. It's been a long time, right? 3 years running, so or two and a half at least. So I don't always remember exactly, but anyways, you can go listen to that. It's called Corpse Hopping. Um, First episode. Yeah. So in rigor mortis, they're not explicitly depicted, but they are shown, meaning that they are shown as part of a caravan of underworld cops. So you see them kind of walk through the hallway, and even though it's not explicitly hey by wuchang, black and white brother or black and white uncle, they're implied. If you are familiar with the Taoist ghost cosmology, the ghost like the ghost bureaucracy, you'll recognize them. Hey Joshua, what's up?
Hey man, is everything working?
Yeah, sounds good. You sound good.
Wasn't prepared, so I had to overcome some technical difficulties.
No problem at all. I'm glad you made it.
Ghost month, eh? Is that
Yeah,
like a? I've heard there's like 99 holidays throughout the year in Japan or something. Is that like something like this where there's like a small sliver of the year where it's dedicated to something like this? Or
yeah. Basically, where we're at is this is a Chinese holiday, so it's called Qingming, which means the Great Brightness Festival. It takes place most of the lunar month of August. So lunar August is different. It's not exactly the same as Gregorian solar August, but it's pretty close. So it's pretty much all of August, and it's where all of these ancestral festivals and ghosts and called tomb sweeping. Talked a little bit about this before you came on. Tomb sweeping takes place, and people will bring food to the ancestors first, and then they will also do wandering ghost veneration, sort of like bring the ghost back into the fold of heaven, which is also hell in Chinese cosmology, because hell is actually ruled by heaven, meaning that the hell bureaucracy is actually those are heavenly spirits, meaning that they're like King Yama. He is a god of death, but he's also the king of hell. But he's appointed by the Jade Emperor or the Buddha, depending on which formulation you understand or believe in. So yeah, Ghost Month is a very important time for Chinese people, especially the diaspora. It's very common for like Hokkien, Hakka, Hainanese, Techu, Cantonese, of course, people to sort of like recognize their ancestors, especially the ancestors that came to certain countries. So like in Thailand or Indonesia, Chinese people will gather at ethnic Chinese cemeteries and perform these like ancestral rites and propitiation of any if they upset any of the ancestors. A lot of bad luck, especially historically, was always ascribed to the ghosts, the ancestors, excuse me, like sort of offending them. So the Taoist priest will kind of intervene and prescribe like a certain amount of rites for a certain amount of days, especially during this time when the gates of hell are open. I'm calling it hell, but it's not quite hell. It is. It's just the underworld, it's the ghost worlds. So, and then certain spirits escape, like, e darker, evil or evil forces. Of course, those evil forces can also be found in men, which is what I was talking about. Not men as in, like, the sex of man, but man as in, like, humanity. So, though the ghost cops, which is the ones I was kind of giving their hagiography, we'll say, um, heibai wuchang, which means black and white uncle or black and white. Well, that doesn't mean that, but it means black and white impermanence. So, but they can be referred to as black and white brother or black and white uncle. They are the ghost cops. They're not the only ones. There's several others. There's Zhang Gui, and who is half god, half ghost. So he's very important. He rides a tiger, and if you listen to the episodes on time magic and the sort of speculative anthropologies of Southeast Asia, we talk a lot about the tiger spirits, the tiger face Lursi, Pra Lursi, um, Birab, and so tiger face Lursi is very similar to the sort of various tiger spirits in Taoism. There's a tiger general. He's called the Great Tiger Uncle. He is the god, and we did discuss it. I did actually discuss this quite in depth in one of the episodes, but he is one of the deities he's the deity in charge of all the tiger spirits. Zhongguai, he rides a tiger, so usually the tiger gods are propitiated underneath his altars, so they're considered gods under the table, which also carries the same meaning, meaning that they are propitiated using salt pork, alcohol, and sometimes like chilies and things like that because they're quite dangerous and they're considered very hot spirits. So they can be hard to deal with, and they're not often propitiated in the temple itself. Now there are places in Taiwan. There's obviously a very famous tiger temple in Bangkok, and trying to think. There must be one in Singapore as well, several in Malaysia. But anyways, the idea is that sometimes they're propitiated outside. So the hotter the spirit, usually propitiated outside. But if Zhongguai is on the table above them or on the altar, and then they're propitiated underneath, because he rides a tiger, right? That's his vahana, his vehicle. He kind of keeps them in line. He makes them not too hot, but he keeps them in line in terms of you don't necessarily aren't going to go there and do like enemy work underneath his altar. You might do that separately with the tiger spirit outside or at a separate shrine, but you're not going to do it necessarily under this ghost god. So he serves like a subjugating function just to make sure that everything's good. But generally, people like Zhongguai for exorcism in particular and protection against spirits and sorcery. So that's considered to be really important. In terms of like what people give for ghost month offerings, usually it is incense, meaning joss sticks in the Chinese context, and rice. You'll see bowls of rice, and you will also see lamps. Now, Chinese are they'll adopt things like the electricity. I know that sounds funny, but I'm talking about for altar technologies. Yeah, if you go to Chinese restaurants, sometimes they'll have like an altar on the floor, very common. That usually refers to the earth gods. They open the sort of roads to money. We've discussed them, Dr. Gong, Tutti Gong. There we did a whole episode on that. So you can go listen to that. But that is usually what those altars are for. It depends. The different people have obviously it's a complex of like Taoist practices, like folk Taoism. So sometimes you can say a generality. It doesn't necessarily refer to that. In Hong Kong, you'll see a lot of shrines on the ground. They don't necessarily refer to the earth gods in the way that I'm explaining. Sometimes there'll be a ghost of like a specific place, meaning like a very specific place. Ghost addresses, that's very common, where maybe a building used to exist, but they've built like another building right beside it or on top of it. So there'll be no address where the old building used to exist. Sometimes they'll put a shrine there. Sometimes they'll put a shrine above a well, meaning like a fire hydrant well, like a deep tunnel, a deep cavern, but a small. And so sometimes that will have a deity, and other places like there'll be sometimes deities of the alleyway. It depends, very much like the Eshu. So there's a cross cultural similarity. I'm not saying that they are propitiating those deities like all the time. Sometimes those deities just get enshrined and then they can pass on, or they can go to their future rebirth. It doesn't necessarily have to be totally contained. Um, it doesn't their presence or their essence isn't necessarily contained in the worship rites. it's just in the initial sort of recognition that they exist, or people have a dream about them, or they'll appear before someone, or a priest will, or they'll haunt people, and then a priest will get called in and be like, okay, this is a way to pacify the spirit. We're going to put a shrine here, and you're going to do once a month ghost offerings for them, make sure they have like tea or alcohol and like lamps. So that's what I was trying to say about technological innovations on the altar space, is that Chinese people will often adopt electric lights, meaning like those, you'll see red bulbs. That's very popular, very common, because red is that energetic, um, like Rajasic energy that gives essence and life force to both humanity and spirits. So it's very common on spiritual altars to see red, and it's a very auspicious color in Chinese culture. It represents, yes, fire and sort of like the life force. So spirits crave life force. So this is also what makes spirits very dangerous in certain ways, because they can draw from your own life force, especially if you're using them for magic. So that's something to definitely be aware of. And yeah, I don't know. What do you got, Josh?
Oh, I actually had some questions here.
Sure.
So you mentioned King Yama, and instantly I thought of Dragon Ball Z. So, and he's like the governor of that liminal space between Earth and heaven or hell or whatever, where Serpent Way is. And occasionally Goku has some encounters with him. And I thought it was interesting how you characterized Yama, because in the show it kind of puts him in like this managerial office job where he's the king of hell, but he's just doing paperwork for like eternity. And I just thought it was kind of funny. So is it kind of like that for him, you think, where are his duties kind of, and maybe official in that sense, and he has others doing all the busy work? Or is that a fair
Um,
representation of Yama, I guess, and DBZ, I
Yeah.
guess?
No, this is a great question. So this is totally a fair representation of Yama. That's what I was trying to explain a little bit before you came, is that like the hell world is not really like hell as some people think of it. It is really like a bureaucracy. It's part of the heavenly bureaucracy. It's an extension of that. So yeah, what King Yama does is the soul goes down, or the spirit goes down. He reads the name from the book of the underworld, or the book of names, or the book of, and he sort of says, okay, you can go on to this rebirth, or this hell, or this world, or whatever it is. And so the guards of Yama, who traditionally are called Horseface and Oxhead, but that's a older, that's very Buddhist kind of formulation from the old times. Now they prefer these deities. I'm going to pull up a picture of heibai wuchang in a second. But basically the idea is, yeah, is yeah, they serve as functionaries, but all the hell gods do. They serve as retainers to, um, they serve as retainers to Yama. So that's basically the idea. Is that Yama is the administrator. He's an administrator of hell. He's not inherently he's not like, it's not like Satan or anything like that. It's very much about, sorry, I'm trying to do the picture and talk at the same time, and it turned out to be a little heavy.
So
But
he's like, is the manager at the DMV, basically.
basically, yeah, basically. But he, maybe you could say more broad. He's like the governor. He's like the governor of a state. That's actually a good metaphor to use, because it is a state of being, right? Like death is a state of being in a way. So the idea is basically the Oh, I see you put on so many questions. Okay, so I'll pull up a picture of Dragon Ball Z, or DBZ, or DBZ. Yeah, yeah, DBZ. And okay, so I hope I answered that question about King Yama. But I'm going to pull up a
Yeah,
picture of
yeah.
King Yama too, so we can show. But right now I have, and you'll have to actually talk a little while I look for one. But sorry about that, Josh. Putting you
Yeah,
on the
no
spot.
problem.
But
Um,
the picture here, just quickly, you can see he's wearing the hat that says like, well, I can't. It's too small for me to read. But anyways, that's basically like something about like sinners. the people who are punished to the wicked, and the other one has peace on earth. So, there you go, black brother and white brother. And usually they're depicted a lot more horrifying. This is obviously a cosplay picture, but this is a more contemporary way that they are understood. They're not understood as being so horrifying. They're understood as being more ghostly or phantom-like. So, yeah, okay, so let me look for, King Yama, and Josh, you take over for a few minutes or, like, for a moment.
Yeah, sure. Um, so I was wondering too, if what makes this time of year, what makes the gate kind of open, as it were. And so I'm imagining one of Yama's duties, of course, is to manage this gateway. Um, and so I was thinking of also Janus, how it's similar to Janus, how doorways, beginnings, endings, those sorts of themes are often associated with Janus. And this phrase that you used about tomb sweeping is what got me thinking about Janus to begin with. And then I thought, oh, gates and keys. And so I was wondering if, although it's a different time of year, if maybe those sorts of attributions are similar in this. Like, is there a custodial nature to, like Yama's duty here? And if that's indeed the case, then what's the crack in the door represent when the gates open? And so I guess to add to that question is, um, what makes the gate and boundary normally secure, and what's different about this time that would loosen it or crack the door open, as it were?
Okay, great question. I don't actually know. I don't actually know what makes this time in particular. All I know is that it's the lunar festival. The loon is the not the loon. Well, yes, in a way. The moon is in a particular position that allows the threshold of hell to be opened, and it's acceptable. It's like a holiday in hell as well, right? Because Chinese civilization and culture is based on a lot of ancestor veneration, right? Like a lot of cultures are. And so they are allowed to travel upwards. Maybe it's an act of karma. This would be a very Buddhist way to understand. This is why I said I don't know, because I can really only describe it in a Buddhist way. I can't tell you like the deepest Taoist meaning. I can say, yes, it's King Yama as a Buddhist deity. If we're saying it's Buddhism, he opens even in popular Chinese Buddhism, it doesn't matter. He opens the gates because they're going to, it's a restorative, it's sort of restoring the karmic balance of the earth. He allows the spirits to return. They get propitiated by their ancestors or their descendants. The descendants then have like sort of a neutral, they gain merit through their worship of those spirits. Um, Not worship, veneration of their ancestors. Merit is different than karma, but merit can be used to increase karma. But it's a very slow, like your, if you want to call it like an RPG or like a video game, like your, if you were cultivating merit, your bar would fill very quickly, but your karma bar would fill extremely slowly. So even if you maxed
Kind of
out
like your
your,
fame, maybe.
yeah, yeah, something like that. Or your mana could be similar to that, like intelligence versus spirit, right? Like, high spirit often means that your mana bar will recharge you very fast. High intellect means you have a huge pool of mana. So it's different. They're different. They're different qualities, but they are entwined in a way. So merit is often used by people who don't practice like tantra or magic or certain things. I mean, magic can be very karmically implicative. So as we always talk about, so that can be a problem. I did find an awesome picture of King Yama, but it actually is not the right kind of file, but I did find this one. So this is actually sort of answers your question, Josh, is like he's sitting in a,
Yeah, it definitely
yeah,
looks like an administrator.
correct. He's the king of hell. His even his hat, it will have the character, it'll say Wang Yama. So Wang is the Chinese word for king. So he is the king of hell. That's literally what he is. He is the grand governor of all of hell. So in a Chinese sense, he is the overseer of all the bureaucracy, all the paper stuff that he has to do, put his official kingly seal on it, right? When he judges a soul to their, reincarnation or whatever, he has to put his seal on it, so that's kind of the idea. So, basically, Qingming is like the great brightness, so it's when like, you could so I'll give the explanation that I know from childhood. It's the when heaven opens the illumination from heaven shines deep into the bowels of hell or the underworld, and so the spirits sort of go forth into the light. You could say it like that. But the spirits technically have to return at the end of Qingming, at the end of Ghost Month, to the underworld, depending on their karma, right?
Oh,
And what
dude,
it
so is that where
sorry,
like
sorry, go ahead.
train symbolism maybe come in with this? Because I've always wondered about why trains have like this ghostly type of association, and then I guess it would make sense, if you think about it, like, oh, ghosts have to get back home, and but whether it's like Nordic and you're talking about the menagerie of the Wild Hunt, like his cavalcade or whatever. There's always like this leader and then this following, and Anyway, so I was just wondering, like, how do they get to and fro? Is there a wayfare of sorts for them to traverse the realm?
So this is a great question, and I just found the picture that I wanted in the right file format. I could share it the other way. I just am not that, I'm not the most technologically inclined. But here we go. Okay, so this is a great picture because you can see Zhongguai, the ghost god, well, it's on my left. So it's the guy in red with a sword. That's Zhongguai, and he's usually surrounded by bats. Bats are a symbol of longevity, long life in Chinese cosmology. And so you see him there, and then you see the guy in the black. I forgot his name, but he's not propitiated very often as a separate deity. He's the right hand retinue of King Yama. He's the scribe, right? He's like the personal assistant, but he does have a specific name, and he is propitiated to if you want to nudge. Okay, so you wanna, like, bribe him? That's what sometimes people do. If they have, like, an ancestor that they bought, like, they've upset or they wanna give gifts to the ancestor, Chinese people love to burn, like, Joss cars or Joss money, hell money. Sometimes that a bit of that is redirected to, the scribe of Yama who's wearing the black he has the official scholar's hat. That's what the kind of hat he's wearing. Um,
Is
so,
that like
uh
paying extra postage to expedite your?
Yeah, yeah. You're bribing an official, right? Like that's what it
Dude,
is.
that's
You're
hilarious.
bribing the official, so you can like pass on, things like a prison, kind of like you're bribing the prison guard so you can, give your ancestors nicer things. And then you see heibai wuchang, the little black guy with the bluish face, and the white one with his tongue sticking out, lolling tongue. That's what it's called on the other side with the white robe. So there you go. There are the Hellcops right there. And then you have, as I mentioned, the older protectors. These are not deities that necessarily come out of hell. Horse face and ox head. They are gate guardians. So they are gate gods. Shen, I think it's called Shen. Mun no, I can't remember. Anyways, it's like Shunmun or something like that. They're gate gods, gods of the gate. So they actually are often like people in the olden times of old Chinese houses, they used to have courtyards. So on the outer gate, meaning the gate facing the road or the door facing the road, what we would think of as a door, they would be posted on either side of the door. So this horse face and the ox head. And so they protect against any wayward spirits. So they don't
That's
allow any
Yeah,
wayward
that's
spirits
the
in.
answer I was hoping for. That's a good one,
Okay.
man.
Okay.
So like,
Okay.
so if they do come in or out of a house, they're like passing through this gate, so to speak, that might be set up, or it's designed to keep them out, perhaps. Yeah, that's really cool.
And they do the same function, obviously, in the underworld. They don't allow the spirits to leave. Now, if you read one of the Taoist books, Investiture of the Gods, they sometimes get tricked or defeated or whatever happens. If you read the Journey to the West, Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, he beats up both of them because he has business with King Yama and business in the underworld. So, they don't want him in the palace because that's where King Yama lives. It's a palace. So they're kind of like his personal bodyguards. They guard the gate to the upper worlds and the lower worlds, and they don't really come out of those places. It's the two on the either side, the Black and the White Brother. They are the ones who leave the underworld and can return. That's part of their ghostly powers or their godly powers, and only really gods can do that. Like I'm saying, gods, and they're also ghosts. So there is like a way to understand. Like there's a difference, but the truth is like a lot of things with folk Taoism and Chinese sorcery, it's not always clear, especially not always clear to like people in the diaspora that even understand how to do the rituals to a degree, or even like Taoist priests. Because a lot of these are like based on folk stories and sort of regional customs. It's not so cut and dry that it's just like contained in one book, which is one of the problems when a lot of Western scholars went to look at what Taoism actually is, they tended to focus on things like the I Ching or like one of those texts, and like the more well-known Taoist texts instead of like these practices, which are very much tied into Taoism. Because it doesn't say that the spirits don't exist. It's just that the intellectual Taoism, as it's often called, doesn't focus on the cosmology of the world in its particularity. It sort of appraises it and says, okay, well, we're going to focus on cultivation, literature, sort of like this divine higher order, and like the chaos of the sort of primordial worlds. But folk Taoism is pretty much concerned with like it's a kind of shamanism in a way, and people have likened it to this. I used to really hate that word shamanism because what does that even fucking mean? It doesn't really mean anything. It's been totally overutilized in the West, and I'm not mad at like anyone. I'm not a racialist in the sense that like white people can't use shaman to describe anything, like or to describe other things that are not just Tunguskic or Manchurian or Mongolian. Of course they can, of course, and it's not just about white people. It's about like just the commonality of the word. But the problem with it is that it kind of refers to something in the popular imaginal or popular imaginary rather than actually referring to the practices of what that means. So, what I'm talking about when I'm saying Taoism is a kind of shamanism, and this is very much a Taoist view, like I'm drawing right from a Taoist way of thinking about itself. It is a kind of indigenous shamanism where it seeks to balance the heaven and earth. So, as I said, hell is also part of heaven, and just as earth is part of hell. So think of it like this: we're all under the purview of heaven, but there's sort of polarities and forces that are opposed, not necessarily opposed in antinomian or orthodox, or it's not like orthodoxy versus antinomianism, but it's kind of chaos versus order. That's a much more Taoist way to think about it. So, like certain kinds of Taoist priests, not a master of rites, but a master of exorcism. Again, go watch Rigor Mortis. It explains this very well. There are distinctions in Taoist priests. There's like the priest you see, like or Mr. Vampire. This is a great example. Mr. Vampire. So he wears a yellow robe. So he's a wandering master, a wandering, but he's not wandering because he has like a he has like a house and a place where he is like people can consult him for his priestly things, and he has the um I guess the where the bodies are prepared before they travel in the with the bell, right? Before they hop, the corpse hopping. So he wears yellow, so that means he's like an exorcist priest, a magic priest, basically a Taoist priest who practices magic. And but there are other kinds, right? Like there are ones that are closely affiliated with a temple or ghosts or not ghosts, Taoists who are affiliated with monasteries or Taoists who are more into the higher end cultivation of like Zhuangzi or whatever it is. So Yeah, there's all different kinds. So the magical kind of Taoists is what I'm calling the yellow, the ones that wear the yellow robe. They are not always, but they are often the ones who are more mostly like shamans. Like that's the closest, but they often do a lot of exorcism and which is this is one thing that is interesting and maybe different than the I'm just making sure nobody came up that I have to add up into the chat. My
I also
apologies.
have a question for you
Oh,
about that.
sure. Go for it. Go for it, Josh.
Uh, so the colors here really well. I got two questions. The colors here all jumped out at me, and so when you mentioned the yellow robes or whatever, I was thinking, oh, maybe that's saffron or something like that. And then I thought, oh, what if each of these colors in this picture, for instance, what do they use to dye those? Because that's a whole process. And of course, probably some symbolism there, like if a certain plant or root or mineral was used. And then the other thing that came to my mind was in that culture, isn't white considered like not bad, but death or something? And then black's maybe the good one. So I was just wondering if that was a proper interpretation here. I know those words may not fit better as well, but and then the other thing is that you can see the eyes of the guy on the left and not the ones on the right, and his tongue sticking out. And I had read recently that sticking out your tongue can I can't remember how it was phrased, like reduce stress or cortisol or something like that. And so it just jumped out at me. So I was just curious if any of those questions maybe triggered anything for you.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great question. I don't know if I can answer like from a pigment perspective, not really knowing anything about this painting, but I can tell you colors. So first, let's do the ghost color. So yes, in Chinese ghost rites, the most common color is white. So people are going to be like, "What? White?" Yes, because white is more of the ephemeral nature of the spirits, right? It's not concretized. Black is very has gravitational force. If you want to compare it to K-ball, that's totally fine. You could say the white is more like Hokmah and the black is more like Bena. It's denser. Black is very dense. Well, okay, so let's do lolling tongue and then I'll do turquoise. Lolling tongue. So this is part of the story of how a white brother suicided. Sometimes it says he hung himself. Sometimes it said that he threw himself into a well. So the tongue is actually like a symbol that he is indeed a corpse and that he is in, it's sort of like part of his lore, you could say. And then the black brother, he is, because the white brother is more passive, he's more peaceful, right? That's the whole idea. And then the black brother is very aggressive, very strong, very martial. He does kung fu. If you watch series with the about the two of them, I'll bring up the picture again. But if you watch a series with them, the white brother, and you see he's holding his rui or staff, but sometimes he'll hold a horsetail whip. It's not really a whip; it's like a little bamboo stick with a horsetail at the end, and it's called a fly whip. It's used to like scholars used to use it to flick away flies when they were reading in the library, but it also became part of the toolkit of the Chinese exorcist, the Dao Shi. So, or the Fa Shi, whatever it is. So so it's more about magic. So if you watch anime or TV series with the heibai wuchang, the white brother will do magic. He's more of a caster. And that doesn't mean that he can't fight. Of course he can fight. These are all martial heroes in a way. They all know martial arts to a high degree. A part of his fighting style is more range, you could say. And the Black Brother often it's much more physical because obviously his weapon, his chains are much more physical. So those will be much more related to physical fighting and like his martial arts style. So let's go back to the painting. So teal or turquoise. This is very interesting because it is the color of greater heaven. We've often discussed this in Kabbalah terms. Turquoise can be a synonym for white, but it is the clarity of the great blue sky, heaven, directly related to heaven. So that is why Yama has that backdrop and the halo of turquoise, because it's showing he is appointed at the leisure of the Jade Emperor or Buddha, both of whom are associated in a way. I know I said jade, but jade in this context refers to a Qing, which is Jupiter. So that's actually blue green. But he is the Jade Emperor, but it's, really it's more of the blue-green color, so just like turquoise is blue-green. So there's a Hasidic element there too, right? Is that, it's about the blue-green temperance of the supernal waters, meaning that, he has to show mercy, he has to be benevolent, because he's not an evil god, right? He's just a bureaucrat. He's not there to, like, unfairly punish people who didn't do anything wrong. His job is to literally look up your karmas and, like, just make a decision based on that. It's, like, very logical, very bureaucratic. It's
Is it
not.
kind of like Saint Peter at the gate or whatever?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
certainly an element of that you could say that that is part of it. He's even more removed though. But there are certain rites, there are magical rites, and obviously Yama becomes very important in Tantra. He becomes like a deity that is propitiated for magical activity, usually like magical battles or that kind of shit. And so he's very powerful and he's less benevolent in a more tantric framing. It's not that he's not benevolent, but he takes on a very different form and he takes on a very different, very wrathful nature. But and he can do that in the Taoist cosmology as well. So you'll see him sometimes in Chinese temples as a figure to be propitiated by himself, like a King Yama figure. And well, I won't get into it, but you can write people's names and then offer them to King Yama anyway, and so that is kind of like a curse because you're giving someone's name to King Yama, the god of hell or the king of hell, before their time.
Is that what
So
Death Note was basically
it's
about?
drawing from that same mythology. Whether that is specifically what is featured in Death Note is debatable, but certainly the idea of like a book of fate, of karma, it is drawing from like this greater East Asian or Chinese mythology for sure. So I don't know. Did that answer any of your questions,
Oh
Joshua?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm glad you touched about his office there too, because I was wondering like what was on his desk, and you said he had that book, and so I was just curious. Like it helped me understand more about what was going on here, and especially after seeing that other picture too, because I pretty much was what we thought. I think I did have another question though.
I just want to correct myself. I called it Qingming. That's not right. That's the ghost festival for the spring. So that's the time when they do the tomb sweeping also. But you do also do tomb sweeping on ghost month. So it is ghost month. It's just not Qingming. Qingming is the great brightness. So that is the time when you open the gates aren't open during Qingming, but you do these rites to sort of give light to the ancestors or to the spirits of the whatever, to the spirits of the deceased. So I just want to correct myself. I didn't mean to like conflate them. It's just in my memory it was conflated. As I said, it's an impromptu space. We're just going with the flow. But yeah, tomb sweeping because I'm saying that Josh because you have a question about like what is used for tomb sweeping. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know.
like the
Yeah,
species of the herb or broom. I was just thinking like sometimes all those little details maybe do matter. I guess so. I was just curious, like hyssop or something like that. What would even be in season at that. That would be appropriate. I guess.
so like a lot of well, okay, so in southern China, it's usually so you use a new broom. You don't use like your old broom from your house. That's very unlucky. That would be like a curse on the ancestors. So you'd never use something like that. Has to be brand new, preferably straw. The magical material, at least for the diaspora, meaning people from Southeast Asia, ethnic Chinese from Southeast Asia, is coconut, not cocoa, coconut, and that's called in Trinidad. They call it cocoa. So often during Ghost Month, you'll see people going to like Trinidadian stores or whatever, especially in like North America, and they'll be buying these cocoa brooms for tomb sweeping. So coconut has very purifying properties. It's very much of the moon, lunar. It contains inner water. That inner water is often used in folk Buddhism for purifying corpses. So for washing corpses, what I'm talking about, but like purifying also through a spiritual sort of process. And yeah, so that's hey Vanessa, what's up? I actually shouted out Vanessa right at the front, so it's great to see her in the chat. Um, also, the okay, Josh, do another question. Sorry about that.
Yeah, sure. So you may have covered this earlier, but some of the foods that might be popular, I was curious if the ingredients had any kind of esoteric flair to them, like, oh, we put star anise in these for this reason or that reason. Um, and then also, I think I may have asked you this question before, perhaps last year during the same time, but
That's so
like,
funny,
are the
right?
ghosts hungry and then so the food helps to sate them in some way so that they don't maybe cause misfortune or folly or something like that? Or is it just kind of done purely out of respect?
So this is what I'll say about that. Go watch Rigor Mortis. Anyone watching or listening, obviously, go watch Rigor Mortis. It's a great movie. But you never eat ghost offerings. Like once it's offered to the ghost, it's theirs. So different cultures, like different cultural groups within Chinese ethnicity broadly, will have different customs. For Cantonese people, since I am Cantonese, I'll speak on that. You can like chicken is very frequent, meat in general. You don't really offer tamasic things to the gods or to the spirits, meaning like chilies, garlic, those kinds of things. That is said to turn them into wrathful, to angry ghosts, hungry ghosts. You offer them simple foods, more simple foods. Um, and meat is considered to be okay. Meat and alcohol during Ghost Month, especially, but you'll sometimes see it offered at other times. But usually, ghosts get offered vegetarian food because it's you don't want to increase their hunger for
Oh,
a
that's
worldly gain.
wild, dude. So, like, you mean like how an animal or a pet can get the taste for blood and then it's,
Kind of,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's definitely how it is. What's up, CJ?
How's it going, Jen?
Good. I'm glad to see you. So this is I obviously said right at the front. I was like CJ's gonna pop in when he comes, and I did shout you out, and I made sure to plug you and all your episodes and your own IG, all of course, and for being part of the lodge and joining Twitter now, which I think is really cool because it's kind of like marries. I don't have to go like live on Instagram, which I hate. To talk to you, I can just talk to you guys all in one place now. And so we talked a little about Qingming, heibai wuchang, the ghost cops, the black and white uncles, and Kinyama. We did a lot about Kinyama, and we talked a little bit about the guy who's wearing the red, who's named Zhang Guai, who's half ghost, half god, and also Oxface or Oxhead and Horseface, the sort of bodyguards of King Yama. And we talked a little bit about like where Josh is asking me about like what to offer spirits traditionally for Ghost Month, but also Ghost Month and beyond. Like what are traditional offerings for the ghosts in those terms? And I just will finish by saying alcohol is sometimes used, but not always. Sometimes it's ritually purified by dew, which is like a white rice liquor, but it's purified, right? It's people have said prayers over it, so it's very similar to tantra. You transmute the alcohol and from spirits into Quran. So this is the same thing for Taoism in general, and also. But usually you offer them tea. That's more what we would do in a like normative setting. And jaw sticks. Jaw sticks are very, very important because spirits have a strong, strong sense of smell. That's one of their most it's for people without physical materiality, or like spirits without like a material body. Their sense of smell is very strong. So the joss sticks will often be jasmine or sandalwood or agar wood or aloe wood or any of those. You'll see that's very common in Chinese. So you'll see a lot of those for joss sticks, and they
Can
have
you
a very strong.
explain what that is exactly? Is that like a thin piece of wood that you would burn instead of an incense, or
Yeah, I'm going to bring up a thing for joss
I
sticks
just
right
never
now.
heard that term before. That sounded interesting.
Sorry, I'm just finding the thing. But yes, I will. I will show you. I'll even pull up a brand, a Guanyin brand. There we go. Okay. Oh, there we have Arrows. What's up, Arrows? How are you doing?
Hello, hello. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited that all of you like decide to come, and that we like it's not a full house of like everyone, but it's a good group. So thank you guys all.
Hero showed up just as we were talking about ghost food. So did you eat some tasty ghost food or something and show up?
Yeah, dude, I had some pierogies and sausage.
That sounds good.
Also, those are the joss sticks.
Yeah, that's a joss. So those are joss sticks, Joshua. They are incense, but they aren't incense in like the typical Western sense. Well, no pun. They're more
That's a good one.
yeah, they're more fragrant than they are. It's mostly they mostly use like bamboo dust.
And how
That's
do these relate to the ghosts?
because ghosts have a very strong sense of smell. So they're almost always used in any ghost ritual or even veneration of deities. They are burnt, usually in sets of three. They're given in as an offering. So this is a primary offering, primary ritual technology. It attracts the spirits, and because of the fragrance of the woods, like Josh was asking me about, like spiritual properties in Chinese thinking, the kind of high end smells like sandalwood, jasmine, aloe wood, agar wood, those things elevate the nature of the spirits. We were talking about how you don't really feed the spirits garlic, chilies, those kinds of things. Never raw meat. It's always like cooked duck or cooked chicken with rice. Rice is very, very important because that represents like the sustaining nature of the earth as well. So you always see when you give spirit offerings, it always be by rice. So the joss is super important, and just in general, it attracts good spirits and also raises their nature.
Interesting. Why not garlic?
Because those things are tamasic in nature, or well, garlic is tamasic in nature. So we'll start there. So those considered to make the ghosts hungrier. It makes them like more ferocious, more difficult, more hotter. Like it increases their sort of like distemperate nature. They're more, it aligns them more to chaos, more to quote unquote evil.
Interesting, because I know a lot of people probably give Hecate garlic, and Hecate is kind of like the guider of lost souls.
So it's not like it's look, it's just because of the nature of the foods. If you're a solitary or not solitary practitioner, if you're just like venerating your ancestors, or venerating like wandering ghosts in your apartment building, you're not going to want to increase their temperature. You don't want to increase their sort of interaction with you. You want it to be balanced. You want it to be sort of a rite of pacification rather than a rite of like you're not trying to like with Hecate, you're I assume you are trying to like get her to sort of do something for you or be like like to presence her. Ghosts are just considered more everyday, more quotidian. They're just like they exist. So the ghost rites serve as a sort of balancing of heaven and earth rather than you're not necessarily, unless you're doing straight up sorcery, you just want them to be pacified and not bother you. That's kind of the Chinese idea.
That makes sense. I know I'm asking a lot of questions, but
No, it's
why
great.
wouldn't you just banish them?
So this is not the Chinese way, is because they have such strong ancestor veneration as part of Buddhism, as part of Daoism. You don't banish them. What you can do, and this is something we spoke of before, and I'll pull up the picture again. So this is something that you would invoke the ghost gods for. If you needed to exorcise spirits, you don't necessarily deal with it yourself. You can, obviously, if you're a Taoist priest, a Fasher or Daosher, you can. But in general, what most people do, and a lot of lay Taoist priests, which are a thing, we talked about it, they wear yellow robes. Anyways, they will have specific deities that they propitiate. These are just one example. So the black brother and the white brother, heibai wuchang, black and white impermanence. They are the ghost cops. They are the ones who serve under King Yama in his retinue and are able to leave the underworld and go capture spirits that are not supposed to be in the world, but they will also, as I said to Joshua, so apologies, Joshua, but they punish, also, they will sometimes punish people for being unvirtuous. So you have to be careful with them, but in general, they're the ones who are tasked with returning evil spirits to the underworld and sort of pacifying any ghosts that harm people. They can both chain them. That's the black brother. That's his magical weapon, is our shackles. And the white uncle, as you see, he wields a fan or this horsewhip. So the horsewhip is a tool, and the fan as well. The fan is a tool of purification, so it purifies the miasma. You're thinking like Inuyasha, or he will wield the horsewhip, which is a tool of exorcism, meaning subjugating of the spirits. So it's just that the ghost cops are more. It's not just them; there are other ones as well. But they're, in Taoist terms, these are the ones that are most heavily relied upon, rather than strictly exercising them yourself. So you would go to the people whose divine office is exorcism in particular.
That's awesome.
It is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're very cool. I like them a lot.
So Jen, if you throw ghost food and the ghost runs after it, is that exorcising the spirit? I'm just joking.
Well, I mean, okay, so wandering ghosts, let's talk about that for a little bit, because I think Arrow's kind of touched on it with the Hekati stuff. So wandering ghosts certainly exist. What a wandering ghost is in Taoist terms is not inherently the same thing as how we think of spirits, because obviously, if you're saying like ghost veneration exists within the continuity of ancestor worship, most ghosts in Chinese terms will have a plaque, a name plaque, saying that they were part of this village, part of this clan, part of this surname, etc., or this family, whatever it is. Wandering ghosts no longer have a name plaque. Maybe their names have been forgotten just by accident, by people moving around, by people moving to different countries. But they are ghosts who are worshipped regularly on either Qingming, which is the spring ghost festival, or Ghost Month, which we are in right now. So basically, they're the spirits who don't, they may not even remember their own names, and you see this as a common trope in like Thai and Southern Chinese, like Hong Kong films, like not always horror films, but TV series about ghosts and all of that. Supernatural, we'll say. So they won't know their own names, so they're not able to be propitiated. But they can be through these wandering ghost rites. Now, wandering ghost magic is more concentrated in Taiwan, because for many reasons that they always had like a strong, I guess the Taoist priests who went to Taiwan, they always had like a deeper, maybe rootedness in that sort of tradition of ghost sorcery. But they will utilize the wandering spirits for things sometimes, but the wandering spirits can cause extreme bad luck. So this also goes back to what you were asking, Eros, is like, why wouldn't you banish them? At times, the especially wandering spirits, but not just them, hungry ghosts in general, can be too powerful for any practitioner. There are stories in Taiwan of this particular theme park. We don't have to get into it. The place was just considered to be extremely unlucky, extremely haunted, and every time that they would try and bring in an exorcist or a psychic from Japan or from China or from Hong Kong or whatever it was, the exorcist there were several exorcists who actually died. So or and psychics. So obviously that's a problem. And also people who would buy the grounds to sort of transform the theme park into something viable, they would either get really sick, they would go bankrupt. It was just considered to be very extremely unlucky. So what the wandering ghost rites do is sort of pacify those spirits so then they can live out their karma. They can recognize their own karma and see themselves and sort of become more elevated and then passed on to the next life. So it sort of rebalances the land. But that's not always possible. So sometimes these ghosts are tamed, meaning ritually bound to physical objects or swords or temples. This is very common because obviously if people go to a temple, they're praying. Hopefully their prayers are good. So their prayers purify the actual temple space itself, the ground that the temple dwells within. So sometimes you'll see, and you see this a lot in anime too, is they'll put like demons or spirits, ghosts that are malevolent underneath shrines. And so the idea is that like the collective prayers will purify the spirit. So eventually, maybe in like 100 years, 200 years, whatever it is, the spirit will then become purified enough to sort of transcend its own karma as a hungry ghost. So, yeah, these are like in Asian culture at least, ghosts are considered to be very dangerous. And we did talk about a little bit about this, like Josh and I, and then even before Josh came. Um, so I don't want to be redundant, but the necromantic currents, as to use like a more modern left-hand path term, contemporary left-hand path idea, it can be very decaying. It actually brings you into the bardo. It brings you into the ghost worlds. That can be very hard on the body. It can increase your own predisposition for hungry ghost nature, meaning your own physical desires, which aren't necessarily bad, but in a Buddhist terms, you don't want to increase. We already exist on the carnal ground. You don't want to increase your predisposition to the desire. And you also don't want to subject yourself to the time of the ghost world. Time moves very differently from them. So you are you're allowing your body to decay or degenerate more quickly by engaging with the ghost current. That's a very Chinese way to think about it.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Would that like cause people to develop gray hair quicker or something like
Yes.
that? Like, yeah.
Again, watch Mr. Vampire. It explains all of this in the sense that like you can just look for subtle cues. It really does a great job of showing like what Taoism in obviously in a fantastic and supernaturalist way, but it very much shows like a kind of practical Taoism that existed at the turn of the century. And then obviously if you watch Rigor Mortis or listen to my episode on it, you can see like there's a lot of things where like okay so the guy's hair turns gray, like to answer your question Joshua, at the very end of the film it silvers, turns from black into silver because of the stress, because of the engagement with the spiritual forces, the forces of heaven and earth, the rebalancing of the energies. So yeah, ghosts are considered dangerous. It's not like people might have different ideas about it. And obviously, in the new world, we're heavily, well, all of us, but CJ and I and Solar, and obviously with Eros and like Hecate and all on sort of the, I don't know, milieu that we're all within, in to varying degrees. We are more informed by these more hot spirit ideas, meaning the nature of the spirits, and we're also a little bit more engaged, perhaps, with them. But in the Chinese terms, is all about pacification, balancing, and if you're going to engage with Chinese ghost sorcery, it's not that it's not done; it's just that it's done in context to religious rites in general. Like in general, of course, there are black magicians. Of course, there are black magic sorcerers. Of course, there are, villain hitting rituals, that's what it's called when you curse someone. But you usually don't use ghosts to do that. Almost never use the tiger god. So, not the tiger face Lucy, the tiger god. Different, but they're interrelated, but they're not the same. So yeah, you just you treat them with respect because it's like they could be your ancestor. Like maybe they're a ghost that time forgot. Maybe they've wandered the earth for like 100 years and they've had no one to like show them the way. They've had no one to, a lot of the Western mythologies focus on the psychopomp for the magician or for the spirits themselves. But this is sort of inverted in an interesting way in Daoism. The humanity, and this is also true for Buddhism. This is all. This is what we were even talking about in our chat like a couple hours ago. The spirits actually look to us to intervene for them before heaven, before King Yama. They look to us. So if you're thinking about it like that, and recognizing that if you interfere with their destiny or fate or karma, you are implicating yourself karmically in something very negative. I'm not saying that it's that they don't do the negative or like whatever black magic practices, but they recognize, maybe through Buddhism, maybe this was always like a Buddhist idea, is that they need you to recite the mantra, they need you to perform the ghost ritual. They rely heavily on humanity to serve as intermediaries to heaven for them, rather than the invocation of a psychopomp like Eshu or Papa Legba or even heibai wuchang. Like, they are psychopomps. They're to lead the spirits to either heaven or hell, or return the spirit to jail, like underworld jail. And so, but really, even heibai wuchang, like even the ghost gods, they're subject to us. Like, if we don't perform the rites, they don't really exist. This is a much more like Taoist way to think. They exist maybe as like spiritual forces, but they can't interact with us just of their own nature. So we perform the rituals, or Taoists or Buddhists or whomever perform the rituals so then they can intercede on our behalf if they so choose. Because again, they're gods, they're ghost gods, so they have a degree of free will where they get to choose if they're going to intercede. And the Black Brother, his hat says, punishment to the wicked, and just like the White Brother says, blessings to the virtuous, peace on earth. So they get a degree of choice whether they want to help you or not. But if you're performing the rites continuously as like a priest, then hopefully, if they're your deities, then hopefully you'll be in good standing relationship. And this is something we talk about a lot, like relational ontologies, like being in good relation, being in reciprocity with the spirits, rather than asking them constantly for favors. The whole idea is not as necessarily transactional. You're not just going to them for a job, you're actually going to them on prescribed ritual times, prescribed ritual dates, and you're sort of developing that relationship. So then when you need to invoke them, or when you want lottery numbers, or when you want whatever they invoke for in Southeast Asia, them for exorcism, healing, blessing, protection, etc., they're going to be available for you. It's not just, you're not just going to negotiate with them. They're actually going to recognize you as like an intermediary between those forces of order and chaos.
I think it's really interesting, the use of name plaques in Taoism, and I know they're used also in certain practices in the Dujam Tursar tradition, regarding like Troma and Bardo rites, but it's almost like it's kind of equivalent to how hoodoo and voodoo use grave soil in the new world traditions.
So this is obviously names and writing and the names of things. Let's just start there, because this is obviously, it's universal, but it's particularly Asian. Because why? Tibetan is not especially logographic, but it has a logographic quality. Just like Chinese is very logographic, but in contemporary Chinese writing, it's not necessarily logographic as it was in classical, right? So the idea is names are a primary ritual technology or ritual magical tool. Same in K-Ball, same in basically, read Ursula K. Le Guin. he was an amazing Kabbalist. So if you don't believe me, you can go to another Kabbalist and see the same idea. The original primordial names of things, this is true for all Western esoterica. The primordial names of things are the true essence of something, and so then you gain power over using it. If you use name plaques, um, you are you have a degree of power over whatever is named. Like a lot of maybe we won't talk about. Actually, Joshua and I talked about this before your Eros and CJ came, but the giving of names to King Yama through hell money, writing people's like actual living people's names. I'm not saying to do this. Please don't do this. And I'm not going to explain how to do it. Just burning the hell money is not enough alone, although that is a curse. So don't do that. That's very karmically implicative. Don't do that. But the idea is like you offer the name to King Yama, so then he has an idea of who that living person is. So then it actually allows the hell cops to then, or whomever the hell forces, to then treat them as an adversarial figure, as a sort of like a wayward ghost that needs to be brought back into the underworld. It also it kind of implies that they are a spirit wandering the earthly world. So yeah, names are very, very powerful, extremely powerful, just like dates of birth are very powerful. But if you combine the two, it becomes like extreme. It's like it's a tool of subjugation, and but it can also be for protection. It can also be for healing. It can also be for blessing. So it's not all black magic in the Grey Lodge for sure. I just want to point that out. But we're not going to shy. I'm not going to shy away from it. I mean, it's part of the spaces, is how we discussed it and how we understand it. But definitely, names are the primordial. It's the primordial word, if you want to call it, of God, the original divine language. The true name of something is its most essential character.
Are those layman or laman plaques used in summoning similar, you think, in this way, like as being like a name plaque, because it has maybe the sigil or signature and maybe the name, or so on and so forth? That's just what came to mind when you guys were talking about
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, that's what Chinese names are, right? Like they have the family name, then the given name, then maybe the clan name. Maybe they'll have like an epigraph on it, like some kind of title of the person or whatever it is. And I think the idea is, yeah, that's what they are. I'll pull up a thing. CJ, you can talk for a few minutes, or Eros, or whomever, or Josh. Just like give me a second to pull up a name plaque, or like a Chinese style name plaque. Let me find a picture.
Well, I can comment on one thing you were talking about earlier about burying malevolent deities under shrines. Something spooky to go along with that, I think I may have mentioned before, was the tradition of burying certain types of animals like dogs or lambs under the altar of churches, and those become like the protector spirit or whatever. So I was thinking, in this case, if you're putting a malevolent deity under the shrine, it's almost like they're using a guard dog, so to speak, like an aggressive deity to guard that space, whereas something that's more protective and nurturing maybe wouldn't be as well suited. But I can also see the point of purification of the malevolent deity as well, of course. But that's what came to mind. So I think might be like a ubiquitous tendency to try and do things like that.
Well, okay, so let's start. Sorry, CJ, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it sounds like a foundation sacrifice. I know they did that in, I think, Bangkok. Like, there's the city pillar there that has someone who was selected in a lottery and was sacrificed under the pillar to act as a guardian of the city. And then churches, like Joshua was saying, they would create church brims by sacrificing dogs and burying them in the foundation of the church.
So this is something that I'm familiar with from Chinese culture. We're not gonna get totally into it. I think we'll wait and do like a separate space on Daoist sorcery, simply because it's unlucky during Ghost Month to discuss such things, because obviously we don't want to increase the hungry nature of the ghost, their desire for flesh. only cooked foods only. And but yes, I understand of what both of you are saying. I think it's a very interesting point. But to go back to the name thing, so in the original Taoist magic, they did not use the written names. Or, well, okay, so this is contentious actually, and very interesting. So there's this clearly the 6th century interaction in China between Tantric Buddhism and Taoism. Unlike what people think, they're actually very mutually informative of each other, and they're actually very co-creative with each other. So it's a contention of whether the Taoists use the writing as a ritual technology using like the spell charms. As you can see, those are the red and yellow seals above them. They will have various things. Sometimes it's not it's not writing as people can generally understand. Sometimes it will have invocations or prayers or different things. And because Chinese is logographic, as I was explaining, Josh, it inherently carries power. It carries chi. That's exactly how Chinese calligraphy is thought of. There's an energetic quality because of the way the characters are written, because each stroke is actually numbered. So like even the directionality of a stroke, and you can tell. I'm not the greatest at Chinese calligraphy, but I do speak Mandarin fairly well, and so it does matter. It really matters. Like people will just like shortcut, and a lot of kids, I know a lot of like younger Chinese kids will sort of shortcut how Chinese characters are written. Koreans do this when they write Chinese, especially their names. They'll like make little curlicues or loops on things. No, that is not how we write classical Chinese or even traditional Chinese. You have to follow stroke order. And people who can read those characters like with a high degree of fluency, um, raised in the culture, like my grandparents, they will immediately know. I know this from direct experience. They will immediately know when you don't use the correct stroke order. There's a kind of look the character takes on, a kind of misshapenness, a kind of imbalance. So the energy comes from not just the character itself, not just the meaning itself, not just the sound itself, but from actually the way it is written. So the ritual activity of writing also imbues the Chinese characters, which are logographic, meaning that they are sort of greater ideas that can permeate reality. That's definitely one way to think of it in writing. So there's this rich exchange of ritual technologies between the Buddhist and the Taoist tantrics, we'll call them, or sorcerers. And so the Buddhists are said to have given the Taoist mudras. So Taoism has a lot of mudras. They're not identical to Buddhist mudras in the sense that the meaning is slightly differentiated or changed. And then, so they have that. And then perhaps the Taoist gave at least the Chinese Buddhists, the Chinese tantrics, like Amoga Vajra and that the whole milieu, which later became all of East Asian Tantra. So very, very seminal, very important. They gave the idea of the logographic scripts using the seals and like the magic charm seals. They gave that over to Buddhism. That's one theory. I'm not against it. I think it's mutually informative. I think there were probably ritual gestures from Taoism, and there were probably written seals using obviously Sanskrit. Already had that, but Sanskrit is not logographic. Like Chinese is logographic, so there's a differentiation in like even the conceptualization of how it interacts with the heavenly and earthly forces. So, oh, Frau Blucher has a great question. Are there people who specialize in that sort of writing? Yes, there are. So, one of the Taoist scripts is called cloud script. So, this is something that only Taoist priests can read. Not all Taoist priests can read all different kinds of cloud scripts, and cloud script is not the only one. There's lightning script, there's rain script, there's various ones. Um, Jade Seal script. There's all different sort of each Taoist school would sort of adopt different sigil formulations. And I do have an episode with the Taoist priest, episode 80, Borderland Wanderer. So we talk a little bit about this. So if you're really interested, if anyone's really interested, they can obviously go check out that episode of Threshold Saints. Um, but yes, so people who are masters of calligraphy, which unfortunately has died out to some degree, they will also understand that. Well, there's an old saying about how calligraphy is the same as swordplay. meaning that there's an energetic and spiritual component of cultivation of, and also like like performance, ritual performance of magic, sort of, you could say. So even a calligraphy master, just of conventional non-liturgical calligraphy, they will still be able to imbue characters with power, which is why you will see in martial arts schools or houses, especially like rich people's houses in old times in China. They will always have a placard or multiple placards that sort of exalt the ancestors or exalt the head of the patriarch of the family, or make a word pun, or refer to sort of Chinese poetry, because those kind of things are auspicious, are beneficial, are the increase of good qi, or the, it's not that it increases good qi. I mean, this is something slightly different than the Western idea of magic. The good qi already exists, just like in Tibetan Buddhism. The yang already exists in the world. It's carried on the winds. There's no increase or decrease. But what there is sort of like fate and karma, and like this complicated way of understanding the spiritual forces of heaven and earth and how they interact. So there's ways to invoke the good energies to flow through the house, like feng shui, like feng shui, as people call it, feng shui, if you're really Canto. Anyways, that is to increase the flow of life force, vital energies, good, positive, auspicious, beneficial energies to give vitality and sort of blessing to the family. But then there are also like negative energies that can cause the downfall of fortunes, the decrease of familial lineages, all of that. So the whole point is to like build up as much auspiciousness, as much good energy as possible, while not doing things that are considered unvirtuous. So those things that could be detrimental karmically, or upset the spirits, or upset the gods, or upset heaven. That's more of the understanding, upset heaven, upset the balance at least. So those things would be very detrimental. So you want to increase the yang or the yang, right? Like you want to increase the vital energies, the flow of them into your life, rather than truncate them. So that's the idea of like why you would perform like swordplay or calligraphy. Those things also increase vital energies in your body. And so when you put them on like a placard, that's supposed to generate the chi around it. Not just in the not just by itself as like a kind of sympathetic magic, although that is true to a degree, but the magic is really, as I always say, in your own consciousness. It's when you like walk through the threshold of one of those old Chinese houses, like this is a perfect example, this temple right here. You can see there's the way you walk into the temple is through the courtyard, the inner temple. So when you're passing through the gateway, and there's like a placard with like Chinese poetry or some kind of like, um, blessing on the house, you're reading that. So you're the one who's then invoking those vital energies that you carry with you on your breath and your consciousness into that house as well. So it's much more dynamic. It's much more focused on the dynamic. I know Eros would call it like like bringing the heavenly order into the home. Whereas like ghost rituals and ghost gods and ghost worship tends to be about uh, pushing things away, meaning like you are exercising negative forces, not necessarily the spiritual bodies themselves, but the negativity that's associated with them, because ghosts inherently bring negative energy with them. Not negative energy as in like evil per se, but it's yin energy. It's the subtle force. It's the lunar force. It's the force of the darkness of the sky. It's not it's not inherently evil, but it's detriment. It's not vital. It's kind of the opposite. It's subtle. So it's of the realm of dreams and the waters and coldness. It's not really meant for humanity. We're supposed to inhabit the fiery yang energies. So
Can I ask a follow-up question regarding the writing?
sure, of
So,
course.
so to that point, that the question she was asking, like if people were specialized in that. So, like if I needed to get a document or something official, like, is that only done in certain ways like that, for instance. So like you'd have to go to like a notary type person to sign it. Because I remember once before we talked about also like, was it kanji, or maybe that's the wrong word.
Yeah.
People get like seals or whatever.
Same
Oh,
thing.
yeah, okay. So then you have to get a signature or something. So is that maybe one way to look at it? Like it's like very official, or?
So everybody in ancient China and also in Japan, contemporary Japan to this day, will carry what we would call in colloquial English a chop, CHOP. So that is your name written in a specific way in a square, and it is like a stamp. And that is your official seal. Like that is your official signature. Like you can't sign Japanese documents, and in China you also have a chop. Like you have to have one. It's part of like your identity. So you'll have a chop with your name engraved on it, and traditionally this is like your identity card. And even in like ancient China, like all the way back to like Song Dynasty, Tang Dynasty, older Han Dynasty, like 3rd century BC maybe. So yeah, basically your chop, which is your name written in a specific script within a square that is then sealed on official documents, that is sort of like, well, this is the thing. This is a common trope in Chinese wuxia literature, like the heroic swordplay literature, is that some rebels or some evil faction or some evil eunuch will steal the chop of the king, the seal, the name seal of the king, so they'll be able to sign the official documents and send them out to all the governors of the provinces. So but they'll look official because they are official, because you can't deny an order that has the mark of the king, the seal of the king that has his name on it, right? So in a way it goes back to what you were asking, Joshua, about like the name placards and like how to invoke the spirits. Like that's why in traditional Chinese culture, you would keep very extensive clan records of like every single descendant, every single ancestor, no matter how branched it is. Excuse me, no pun. If you go to China, like
Yeah, I got that one.
right, I didn't mean to say it as a thing, but they are written, they are actually like a tree. So if you go to China, some like southern China, where most people from the West, although this has changed a lot now, the Cantonese diaspora, you can go back to like I can go back to where my original village is in China and in Canton, Guangzhou. Um, and you can I can go to the village and I can go look at the clan. There's like it's like a house. It looks just like this place, and so they'll have everyone who's part of that surname, and they'll have like every branch member, every descendant, and like all the people basically are recorded with their name. So that's how to keep people from being wandering ghosts. You have to keep them in the lineage. Obviously, this is an imperfect process because it's the world and it's samsaric. So things get lost. People forget their names. People forget their ancestors. It is what it is. Displacement, war, it just is what it is. So, but yeah, this is definitely the name chop is very important, especially historically. And so there's a lot of Taoist seals that are made with stamps as well. So they will take mulberry paper. I know you love the herbal sort of technologies,
Yeah,
Josh.
yeah.
So yeah, they'll use mulberry paper, which is considered to be extremely exorcistic in nature, and they will make these magical seals. So, yellow paper is usually for blessings or for ghost magic. Sometimes the seals will be white. That is also for ghost magic, although it's not necessarily of the same, it's not as energetic as the yellow. They're much more for to seal things in place. And then you will see either dark purple or black. So when it's dark purple, the script on it will be black. When it is black, the script will be red. So the dark purple is used for very ferocious exorcistic rites of a positive nature, meaning that you are restoring balance to the heavenly forces. Okay. So you're putting like an evil spirit back, you're sending it back to hell. Obviously, most people don't know how to do this, don't like understand this. Okay. But the purple is very, very common in terms of for those. No, it's not very, very common. It's very, very rare, and it's utilized for very wrathful purposes, but what we would say karmically positive, generative ones. And then we would say the black paper with red writing. Now that is strictly black magic. So, yeah. But even on the yellow scripts, the conventional scripts, the old way to write them is actually with using the blood of a black cockerel or a rooster. That's what it is. It's a black rooster. So you use a black rooster to write those. Again, watch Rigor Mortis, it explains it. But yeah, use a black rooster to write that blood. But they don't do that anymore. And as I said, a lot of the temples have become more informed by Buddhism. So they will use China ink, if you've ever heard of that, or India ink. It actually comes from China. And they would use crushed indigo and various other things. I know you do, Cassandra. Black roosters, rooster tarot, it's coming. Anyway, but so they'll use like dragon's blood resin, which is very, very red. And you can crush it and mix it with indigo and mix it with various things. Charcoal is usually used to make China ink. So, yeah, that's basically like they treat sigil making very, very. They have a high technological sort of sigil making culture. That's where Chinese magic is really strong, probably stronger than any other culture, because all words in Chinese, just like all words in English, as I always say this, you guys have all heard me say this, words are magic. Words are absolutely magic. But Chinese words are, especially Chinese written words, especially traditional characters. Now, you can definitely make a distinction between traditional and simplified characters. So, like when you write with what Joshua called kanji, that's not the wrong word. That's exactly what Chinese characters are. That's what kanji means. It's referring to written Chinese characters, traditional characters. In Mandarin, we call it Hanzi. So it's the exact same. It's written in the same way. We just pronounce it Hanzi. That's the original name. So, but if you write in traditional characters, it carries with it the yang, or if you want to use the Tibetan word, the energetic force. If you write it in simplified, it doesn't have the same meaning. It doesn't have the same power quality. I'm not saying it does nothing. I just think that the traditional character is a lot more powerful. So,
Well, and I actually wanted to ask you one more question about the
Sure.
language. Sorry to keep dragging it out.
No.
But so in King Yama's world, then are all these documents going to have like what the old people would recognize as like that? Would it be in that old style, or his little scribe there off to the side, would like he be writing in that same style? Is that like mimicking something that heavenly, or I guess I don't know if I'm asking the question properly, but is that like a mirror of sorts?
So there is this a really interesting question. I'm obviously I'm glad that all of you joined me, but it's a great question in general. Is that there's a heavenly book. So there's a heavenly book of karma. As I said, depending on your kind of cosmology or worldview, heaven can be ruled by the Jade Emperor, but he's just the figurehead. Even in the Taoist cosmology, he is subordinated to Buddha. Buddha's higher. So people have to reconcile that in their own minds. I know, complicated. It's not like clearly black and white. There is like a continuum rather than a fixed sort of cosmological structure, but you can just say the Buddha's higher because the Buddha is obviously ontological and the Jade Emperor is cosmological. It's a very easy way to sort of distinguish them. Okay, but so yeah, there is a heavenly book of karma. But you only can get there, at least in Taoist terms, if you become a god. And then by God, I'm not talking about like Norse gods or like the Vedic gods or any of those, like what people popularly think of gods. It's like, again, it's heavenly bureaucracy. You can be a god of something like so inane. Like you can be like literally the god of like the door of a stable. People are familiar with the Journey to the West, Sandy. So the sand demon, he originally was the god who guarded some pillar, some door in the heavenly or celestial stables. So technically, his office might be the stable, might be horses, might be riding in a degree, but really he is the god of like the door of a stable. So you can only really you're only written in there by doing karmically sort of beneficial action, action that is like accordant with the will of heaven. That's exactly how they would describe it. So if you've done heroic acts, you can become a god. But just like with the Sandy story, because the journey to the West is inherently Buddhist, it's a Buddhist story through and through. There are, of course, lots of Taoist elements, again, mutually informing each other. He actually falls, he falls from heaven and becomes a sand demon because he fucks up. That's basically the story. So this is clearly a Buddhist parable, exactly how like we would think of it in Buddhism. A deva can fall very easily. It's not that hard. You're utilizing all your good karma to be a deva. So unless you're seriously cultivating in heaven, and if you are seriously cultivating, you're not engaged with the world of man at all. This is obviously how like a Chinese or Buddhist cosmological structure works. It's not necessarily how like a neo-pagans or pagans or anyone really thinks of deities. It's very different. So some gods in heaven actually don't exist in the minds of man at all. They're just like immortals that live there. We don't. They might not be known on in some book or some random temple somewhere, but they're not like these aren't like the it's not like the same kind of god as what people think of when they hear that. These are and the gods who are very involved with humanity, unless they're bodhisattvas. But this is obviously more of a Buddhist framing, but they are utilizing their karma to intercede. So this is why Taoism utilizes the rituals of propitiation, because you're offering something in a transactional quality to these deities, which gives them a kind of door as well as an energetic ability to intercede on your behalf. But again, the relationship is not meant to be transactional. This is a much more like developed way of thinking. This is not necessarily how they were thinking about it in like the Han Dynasty again, 3rd century. It's not like that. They were probably doing things to like well, we know what they were doing. They were trying to propitiate heaven so the king could continue his reign, for a long time. Or the kingdom's health, or to end a plague, or things like that. People's desires have become a lot more individuated and individual. So it requires a different kind of relationship with those forces. So I don't know. Does that answer your question, Josh?
Yeah, I think so. Because in my head, I was just kind of thinking like how standards take place. Like in our culture, it's Helvetica. Like typically when you see a font, that standardized look to it, like Times New Roman or Helvetica or something like that. I was kind of imagining it being that way. And kind of tangential to that, I was thinking of, because you're talking about swordplay and being able to write the characters. And I guess I can kind of see the connection where you would be expected to be able to correctly write a letter, because really that's the essence of swordplay, right? Is to be able to connect your strokes as if you were writing a letter or a word. If you really think about it, it's kind of like that. And if you can't write a letter, then how are you going to be able to combo, so to speak,
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great metaphor. It is in the space between. This is extremely tantric, Josh. So like you got a gold star from me tonight. It is in the space between the words. The space is like how you fill the movements. Like, so if you're familiar with like a martial arts book, like the old fashioned kind where it would show like the positions that you would end up in, but really the sword play is not in the positions you end up in. It's how you get to the movements. It's the movement between the movements. This is exactly how Tantra thinks of ritual, like ritual speech, like Bach. It is in the space between the words that carries the potentiality. So how you connect them. So if you want to put it in like gross Bach or Bach City, which just means gross magical speech, it's all about the grammar, the syntax, the various like it's about the specific word choices and like how they interact with each other. So yeah, that's like a perfect example. And this is like I brought up a picture so people can see this is the kind of word plaque I was talking about. So you can see there's two of them. So you're looking at them and you're reading them, and then you're also like, so you're engaged with the process of consciousness. You're bringing yang, vital energy through your perception into that temple and ritual space. And it's benevolent because what is written on the placards are benevolent. Obviously, if you write something negative, it's going to increase that yin energy, the negative sort of, which is negative, but it's negative in polarity, not necessarily negative in quality. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not evil. It's just like negative in polarity. It's the ghostly energy rather than the fiery humanistic energy.
Yeah, I see
So,
what you mean.
CJ and Eros, do you guys want to? You guys can have the floor if either of you want it.
You mentioned that ghosts are bad luck. There's no ghosts that are good luck or neutral. It's just kind of, are there different types?
This is a great question. So, ancestors are good luck for the most part. They can be malevolent if they are offended, meaning that there are certain things that people can do, like Joshua brought up the idea of name plaques being used to invoke the ancestors. You'll see this a lot in Shaw Brothers movies, but sometimes like a wayward son will take a name placard and he'll smash it on the ground. That's considered to be extremely bad luck. Offering blood to name placards in like a family shrine, this is extremely bad luck. So this will be offensive to greater heaven as well as the ancestors themselves. But the ancestors can be propitiated as benevolent forces, as long as you don't fuck up. They can be propitiated as benevolent forces to help increase the longevity and blessings of a family. So ghosts in and of themselves are more neutral rather than bad luck. What are bad luck are wandering spirits and the energies of like being too entwined with them. You don't like indigenous culture or in general, they also tend to be rather ghost averse. They don't want to be immersed in the current, the kind of like yin current, like the death current. They don't want to inhabit there. They want to sort of be of the earth and be of the sort of like more animal or human world. So Chinese, in a way, they're more friendly to spirits because they recognize that they exist everywhere. They recognize that we have karmic connections to them. I'm not saying indigenous people don't. Obviously, there's a great variation, but in general, especially like in Canada, with the cultures that I'm familiar with, they tend to be very ghost averse. Chinese people tend to seek that sort of pacification, the balancing of the forces of heaven and earth. So it's not that ghosts are necessarily bad, they're not bad, but it's how much are you entwined with them. Like in the space on Thai magic, on speculative anthropologies of I forgot, Lurcy, we call it Lurcy. We talked a lot about this, like even in a lot of the Buddhist magicians, the Buddhist Lurcies, they do not engage with ghosts. This is not always true, but this is sort of the primordial understanding of like the division between a lay Lurcy and like a monk, is that the monk will not inherently deal with the ghost gods or deal with spirits of ghosts, whereas a lay Lurcy will. Same idea. The Taoist, the wandering master of rites, who wears the yellow robe, he will deal with the ghosts, but he's also engaged with the heavenly forces, meaning like his personal gods or the gods he worships or Buddhism or whatever it is. So he's cultivating higher force, higher energies to balance out the ghostly energies. This is what is the primary concern. If you want to say that there's a primary concern. Now, most lay people, most people who are just like going to the Taoist temple and doing like the ancestor offerings like twice a year and doing tomb sweeping and all that, they're just trying to get passive merit in Buddhism. They're trying to fill their merit bar, which is sort of like Joshua and I were talking about it, like what would it be like? Well, it's kind of like mana, but it's also kind of like spirit and intellect. Merit can increase very quickly. Karma increases very slowly, and you can easily damage that. So you can easily decrease that bar as well. Merit increases very quickly, but even when you have a maxed out merit bar, it only gives you like a little teeny sliver of karma.
So is
So
it
you-
like a repeatable quest in a game
Yeah.
or something?
Yeah, it's a habitual activity. So that's what like propitiation during the ghost month is. It's like you're performing the ritual activity for the ancestors to sort of gain what I'm going to call a karmic benefit, but it's not really, it's meritorious benefit. You're doing it to sort of increase your standing with greater heaven, but it's only to a specific degree. And of course, this depends on everyone's karma and their level of virtuousness in the world, right? Like heaven can only, like with the black brother and the white brother, like heibai wuchang, they can only smile. Heaven and like hell can only smile on you as much as you allow. So if you are very, if you're, even gangsters, this is something interesting, is that even gangsters in Chinese cosmology, Taoist cosmology, can be virtuous. Do they adhere to the martial code? Do they adhere to the brotherhood? Do they adhere to like the ethics and sort of practices of that tradition? Then there are like gangsters who are quote unquote ontologically evil. So even though they're gangsters, they're both, you maybe have two sets of gangsters, one is virtuous and the other is not. Well, heaven can smile on the virtuous gangster, but only hell can frown on the evil one. That's a very Chinese way to think about it. Does that answer your question, Eros?
It does.
Okay, good.
Well, but what about like house spirits? Because like in Western tradition, like they're pretty big about that, about like the like house daemon and making offerings to the house daemon and stuff like that. It seems like Eastern tradition does something similar.
This is another great question. So you have to really parse it out culturally. In Japan, they do have I'm forgetting what it's called. I wish Don Lander were here. He could easily tell us. But they have those little girl spirits who are often considered the household ghosts. Chinese, because they worship ancestors, this is the traditional way, obviously much older, like 100 years ago. They would have had ancestral as well as personal ghosts, god altars, like, they would have been an altar to whatever gods that family worship right in the front hall of their house. And then the ancestor hall would be in the back, past the courtyard, like closer to the personal bedrooms. So the idea is you do have the idea that, yeah, there's a genus loci. Oh, Josh and I were talking about this actually, about when you go into Chinese restaurants, they'll often have altars on the ground. Well, this is often for the earth gods, which are called Gong. So we did a whole like speculative anthropology space on it. I forgot what I called it, but it was the Malay one. Malay Indonesian one. And we talked a lot about this. Like the ghost gods are or not ghost gods, sorry, the Gong, the earth grandfather, and his wife, the earth grandmother, Po. They are kind of the genus loci. That's exactly what they are. So they will be propitiated for a specific place. They might be the same as your neighbor, like depending on how it's understood. They might be local to like a village or local to the area, but there also are like ones that they might be one of your ancestors, might be a subsidiary spirit under Gong, because Chinese cosmology is very bureaucratic. So they would be appointed underneath the greater earth spirit of that village or that hill or that place. But you also have this in Thailand. So everybody, I'll find a picture of this really quickly, but I can explain it while I talk, is that you'll have these things called Thai spirit houses. So this actually comes from both animism as well as when Thailand used to be a Hindu country. Well, Thailand was never fully a Hindu country. Let's be clear about that. Thailand was always a esoteric Theravadan country as well as a Hindu country. So it's always been very syncretic in both. So basically, I'm going to bring up a picture of that right now. But yeah, sorry about that. Admin, what can I say? Okay, so this is a spirit house. You can see, so this is obviously placed according to Vastu rules, which are like it's kind of like feng shui feng shui for Indians. But the Vastu rules are from the Autarvadas, so they're Vedic. They're considered to be Vedic knowledge, but it's post-Vedic, and so it basically works in little magic squares. And so they'll do it just like a Vedic chart. Eros, if you've ever seen like a Vedic astrology chart, they will do these geomagic charts for properties using directionalities, and they look just like a chart of like an astrological chart for a person. So it's like arranged in that way, like more of a lotus pattern. So they will.
Sure.
Oh, sorry, Eros, go ahead.
I was just saying, sure.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so they'll place these. What I have on screen is a spirit house. So they'll put them in a specific part of the yard. There's auspicious and inauspicious places to put them. You never ever put them in the shadow of a house. That's very negative. That will attract evil spirits. That's how it's considered. So then these spirits are sort of the spirits of the land. Then maybe the spirits, as you can see in the background, there's a little grove of banana trees. So it will be the ghosts who live in the banana trees. It's a very common, both Chinese and Southeast Asian belief is that the spirits live in fruit trees. So they will, you perform certain rites at it's not really rites, you just offer them things at this outdoor altar. And through that sort of like propitiation or veneration, you will bring harmony to the land and as well as the family. So these are the spirits of the house as well. Like they are very much like where the house dwells upon. Like if we're talking Thailand specifically, traditionally houses are on stilts. So the land is actually more important than the physical structure of the house. The land is the thing that actually is like spiritually informed and charged rather than the house itself. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
This reminds me of, in a modern sense, it kind of reminds me of like those little Wi-Fi extenders you might put throughout your house.
That's kind of what it is.
Yeah, it's like, but for spiritual liturgy, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, because you're gathering all the spirits together, including the wandering ghosts. Like the wandering ghosts, you don't want to bring into the house, so you're propitiating them outside. And what the other idea is so if a wandering ghost comes through your property, what it will do is it will be captured. I'm saying captured, but it's not like Pokemon. Obviously, it is like they will be propitiated by the offerings that you've left on the altar, which is really important in terms of why it's very bad luck to leave offerings that are spoiled, food that is spoiled, flowers that are wilted, alcohol that is evaporated, or water that is evaporated, or sticks that are unburned. So sometimes this happens like with joss sticks. We were talking about joss sticks before. Sometimes when you light joss sticks, they won't stay lit. That's very inauspicious. They should always burn down to the wooden part, the stick thing. So if the offerings are left there too long, or they're spoiled or whatever, or uncleaned, like the spirit house is not cleaned properly, tidied, because it's a reflection of the house. It's a spiritual microcosm of the actual physical building, right? And of the land itself. So the other idea is that the spirits of that land will be powerful enough then to thwart any bad energies that either come from sorcery, evil spirits, or like the evil eye, like from your neighbors, like what is called drishti in Sanskrit. So it's a way for like people to both be in geo-ontological reciprocity, but it's also a way for people to increase their spiritual potentiality of their home base. So like that old adage that like home base advantage, it's exactly the same thing. You're increasing your home base advantage through this kind of like worship interaction. Interestingly, sometimes in Thailand, spirit houses or properties can become very corrupted. So what will happen is the family will fall into decline. So often the spirit houses are then cut down and burned, and then a new one is installed in a different place on that property, or the family will move house entirely, but keep the residence as their property. Because they can't really sell, you can't really give it away, and you can't sell it to someone else knowing that it's karmically infected, you could say. So they have to keep it. And so what they'll do is they'll just shutter the house It's very common. I know this sounds crazy because it's like like all of our capital usually is in our property here. And this is true to a large degree now in Thailand as well, especially now in modernity. But no, it's really important that you maintain karmic connection to like the places that maybe you grew up or were born. And if they are out of harmony, you have to try and seek a way for them to be brought back into harmony. And you also can't just pass on the karmic implication of them. Like, if they have negative karma, you and your family have to deal with it. That's more of the Thai way to think about it. So,
Do you
okay,
think that
CJ.
this? Oh, sorry, I
Oh,
didn't.
sorry, Josh. I
Well,
wanna let CJ
you
go
can go
'cause this is
ahead
his
because I've
turn.
talked a
Okay.
lot.
No, I appreciate it. Both of you can have a go.
I was just gonna say that I've come across some ritual texts that's, I mean, they're not really using spirit houses, but it's for when you are consecrating your home in like a Vajrayana fashion. You're supposed to leave out specific offerings. You're supposed to address the spirit of the house and kind of make it your friend. And it's visualized in like this really specific way that reminds me of some of like the yak ogres from Thailand. But you give it offerings, and then the spirit of like the hearth, the doorway, it that's kind of the home base for the spirit in a home in like a Tibetan sense. And I've always found the similarities between like Thai spirit houses and those kind of genius loci rituals in Vajrayana to be really interesting.
Yeah, so I'm familiar with these in a certain like a certain so there's obviously this is like a much more related to the valley. There's a complex within Vajrayana, but it's particularly Tibetan, of these mountain gods, and they are placed in jars. And because a lot of Tibetan culture, like Tibetans can be nomadic, there's a tradition of them being nomadic, so they will carry the jars around to the different seasonal sort of villages or encampments. So I'm familiar with this in the sense of like they're carrying them around, and then they're sort of invoking those like I think there are 8 predominant gods, but it's not a fixed number like that. It's very region dependent. And then they obviously have like a tent god or a house god that is like the hearth. It's kind of a hearth god, but I've also read like anthropological texts where the god is actually considered to be like the central pole of the house, like the pillar in the center. Or the chimney, depends on like the architectural style.
Yeah,
So yeah, sorry,
I've
CJ.
read those too. No, I've read those too. There's a text that anybody can read. It's up on Kinsei Vision. It's the project that that's just the name of it. It has like a big library of different like really interesting ritual texts and sadhanas and stuff. But they have one specifically addressing like household deities. And before I stumbled on that, I didn't really understand how important that is in like village tantra.
So I take a very different, you would probably say I take a negative position on this subject. It's not that I'm negative to the house spirit or to the land spirit of where you live. I'm not at all. I believe in doing like song offering. I believe in practicing like mantra on the land, on the property, in place, like for the spirits of that place to hear you, of bringing your mind into resolution, so that the spirits around it are also brought into their own realization or resolution or Buddha nature, whatever. But in terms of like doing specific sadhanas to the spirits, like the reality is this, for me, this I'm just going to speak strictly for me. So everybody can do what they will, what they want to. I think of it as it's 2026. Most people have moved houses multiple times. Some people live in apartments. I'm not saying that none of this matters. Obviously, Chinese people live in high rises, especially like Hong Kong. Sort of like go back to like what Eros was saying. In If you watch the Rigor Mortis film from 2012, I can't remember, 2013 maybe. But anyways, you see him. The one guy, the superintendent. He walks into this apartment, which is haunted. We found out later, and he burns 3 joss sticks in the windowsill. And he's like, I just want to make sure like the ghosts are happy. And so that's pretty much like the whole idea is like just pacification. So I just think like people should focus on their prime. Like for me, I just focus on my primary sadhana, my primary deities. I do not deal with like the specific ghost spirit. I might do Kishrapala, like the land protector, and how they arise in the mandala, because if they're, they exist obviously, and depending on what mandala you practice, you might visualize them as riding like a 9-headed black boar, or 9-headed black dog, or a 9-headed black bear. Depends on the tanka, or depends on the mandala. So that's fine. Or if you do Georgi Gottschalk, he is the apotheosis of the Kistrapala into Padmasambhava, obviously. But I mean, that's his form, is of the Kistrapala, of the field protector. So I just think that the resolution to a lot of these like older ritual forms are in the actual deity sadhanas now. So for me, I tend to just focus on those because I know that they are much more powerful and they will resolve the karmas. It might take longer in the sense that like it might be harder for me to accomplish that, but I know that in the long run, those are karmically productive and generative practices. Whereas I think oftentimes people can be very lost in like the propitiation of this spirit and this spirit and this spirit and this spirit. And you see this with Daoism, and this is a big part of why Daoism is incoherent to scholarship, is because different temples will be dedicated to like this random village tribal god and this random like grouping of deities, or these 9 dragon kings, or whatever it is. Like there's so many different like formations. And so I just think that like I just think from a very like I guess a very Vajrayana like Buddhist perspective, in the way that like I approach it, I just think it's better to practice like the higher practices, because you're bringing all those things into resolution anyway, instead of getting caught up in like the list of deities and this and this and this. Like you have to focus on the one, or the like whatever. If you're practicing like a full frame, like Buddha, Deva, Dakini, Dharmapala, so 4, dependent, regardless of however many of those permutations you're practicing, I just think it's better to focus on like your frame. Like this is also very true in a spiritismo too, right? Like you focus on your frame. That's even the word that they often translate into English. You focus on like your courts. Like not everybody has the same courts. Like you might have the court of Indio spirits. You might have the court of gitanos, like gypsies. You might have the court of pirates. You might have the court of Vikings, whatever it is. But you're going to focus on the ones that are closest to you. Just like in voodoo, you focus on the Loi Met Tet. You don't, that's going to be where you're most powerful. And these are obviously more spiritual elemental forces, whereas the Buddhist deities are higher ontological forces. So again, for me, you're conquering the same, you're doing the same activity, but without necessarily engaging with the elemental or spiritual lower forces. Does that make sense?
No, that makes total sense. And I totally agree with everything you just said, but I will add, and this is just how I practice. When I move into a new home, I do one like offering prayer to just kind of make sure that me and the spirits of the house are kind of on the same page, and then I don't really address it after that, because I'm like you, I think they're included in my song offerings. I think they're included in my sadhana, and they get the benefit karmically and just mentally of the practices that I do. But I do like to make that first initial, hey, this is me, this is my family, like we're moving in here, let's all be friends, you can protect us and you'll get good vibes.
I love that. I think everybody should. I think this is what we talk about like on all your episodes, CJ, and like what we talked about with Solar, and like what him and I discuss, and like what you and I discussed privately, and like on obviously you're going to come to as many as you can now to the Gray Lodge things, and I think it's been sort of our greater project just in general is like what is American Dharma, how to bring it to the new world, and I think that this is a great way. It's like that is how to develop geo-ontological relations. Like you need to introduce yourself to the land, to the spirits. Like that is how to perform a proper initial song offering. But like what I said, you don't necessarily need to review the entire list of spirits whose names you may or may not know or recognize, or forms you may or may not know or recognize in every time that you do it. But at the initial stage, yes, I totally agree with you. Introduce yourself to the spirit. Now, they may not be that happy with you or whatever their situation, but just like with meeting a person, that is like the first stage of developing a relationship. So even if you are brought into negative relations, if the spirit doesn't like you or you don't like the spirit for some reason, just by introducing yourself, you're sort of putting yourself in a position that you can actually establish right relations with them. So I totally agree with like what you said. I totally agree, and I'm not even against those older rituals. What I'm saying is like in 2026, it's hard enough to be like a practicing lay tantric in the modern world
Oh
doing
yeah.
like particular sadhanas, right? Like
Yes.
you know this. And so we're not Tibetan nomads in like the on the steep anymore. Like, it's like we're in a different place. We can't necessarily worship those mountain gods and household gods and bring all of that like old world forces to here, because we have all these other spirits, other mountain gods, other, spirits of the forest and all of that.
I would kind of add that, I mean, I think that same line of thinking can be applied to the topic of this episode, which would be like, your wandering ghosts, or the ghosts around you, the ghosts of your house, the ghosts of your family line, yada yada. Like I don't think we need to focus on them, but I think just acknowledging them and, maybe including them in song offerings, or during the Hungry Ghost Month, or during relevant holy days, is, leaving them out just a glass of water. Like, I don't think it's really healthy to, like, we've all been talking about, to really bathe in that death current. But I think the middle path is just to, say a prayer for them.
Look, I believe this, CJ, because we've talked about it many times, and I agree with you. Water is your not spiritual. Water is your primary spiritual technology and incense. So if you really want to, get a little more friendly and not dive into the death current or to the bardo worlds, joss sticks, go to a Chinese religious store and get joss sticks. Get them off Amazon. Get a good brand, but they exist. There's so many brands. Get whatever scent you want. If you don't even like joss sticks, that's fine. They're very smoky and they're very pungent. If you want to use Japanese incense, use Japanese incense. I like Tibetan incense. Everybody knows this because we've talked about it a million times. Tibetan incense is very magical. It's all compounded. It's formulated. It's specific to deities. There's invocations that are set over the herbs, and it's done astrologically. So it's a instantly ready ritual tool. I like joss sticks because I am Chinese. Doesn't bother me. They are quite smoky, and I do have allergies, so I can't really burn them inside that often. But I do once in a while. But in general, I love Tibetan, and I like Japanese incense too. The good Japanese incense, not the daily kind. I don't do the daily Nippon Kodo like matcha scent. I don't like that stuff. I like real herbs, like real botanical fragrance. So I love Tibetan in particular. There's a lot of different kinds. If people have questions, you can. I'm sure CJ would be happy to answer you on IG. I'm happy to suggest a couple kinds that I like on Twitter if people really want to know. But yeah, there's a lot of good websites that have different varying qualities of Tibetan incense. There's a lot of bad quality Tibetan incense too, and especially if it's not selling quickly. Like if you go into a Botanica and they have Tibetan incense, it'll be like yellow manjushri, the green tara in the green box, and like things like that. If you're buying it, make sure it's really fragrant. So why is this? Why am I talking about this? Because that plus water, not alcohol, not tea, water, fresh water, that is going to be your primary ritual technology for dealing with spirits. And you're going to say,
Universally.
exactly. So I know everybody's gonna be like, oh, Jin's withholding all this great magic, or he's not letting CJ like go full on sorcerer. That's not true.
No.
That's not true. I'm telling you the secret of the secrets. Water is your primary ritual technology for dealing with ghosts and spirits in general, not just ghosts, but just like as spirits in the world, and scent. This is why we do sang offering for, like in Buddhism, like we do cedar tips, but you don't have to just do cedar tips. There are sang powders. There are, bayberry,
Cologne.
like we're correct. So this is obviously something that is very popular in the Afro-syncretic religions or Afro-syncretic traditions is the cologne. People in the group and CJ also, even though he is part of the group, obviously, but people in the group specifically know, but CJ and I have talked about it many times privately. I do not like the Botanica Florida waters, colognes. I don't care if it's made in Cuba. I don't care. For me, I don't like how they're too artificial for me. For me, I'm just saying for me. But
I mean,
sorry, CJ, go for it.
No, I was just gonna say, for all of my necromantic stuff, if I'm doing spicy necromancy, which I won't even get into, if I'm doing kind of spicier necromancy, I'll definitely whip out the Siete Machos. Like, I love that cologne for anything chthonic, for anything, feeding the dead. Like, I know a lot of the ingredients that go into it are really awesome necromantic herbs, and just that floral scent, I'm a sucker for it. But I'm kind of with you at this point. I don't really like a lot of the colognes just because of how artificial they are. But there's a few that I'm a real sucker for.
Well, like I said, this is a paradox, right? Like Eros asked, why incense? Why joss sticks? Spirits are very sensitive to scent. Just because it's artificial, because I don't like it, doesn't mean that they won't like it. So there you go. There's a paradox of scent. I just prefer herbs, like straight up botanicals, because those also carry a spiritual and metaphysical potentiality. Whereas the artificial fragrances don't necessarily carry an inherent metaphysical potential beyond scent. But scent is, again, very powerful, and it's very powerful for spirits. So like
universally.
So CJ brought up Siete Machos. That's a cologne I'm also familiar with. Maybe not as familiar as CJ anymore. I've kind of retired from that, but I used to be. And so one of the primary ingredients in that is ylang ylang. So we know, obviously I'm Chinese Indonesian, so ylang ylang actually comes from Indonesia, and it's very pungent, and it's used in offerings for the dead, as well as and it was adopted, interestingly, in Cuba as a sort of like what CJ was saying. It's very much associated with ghosts. This is very directly related to how it's used in Indonesia, in sorcery and in ghost veneration and all that. So, I prefer the botanicals because, again, it is the original. Like, we're going by wisdom text, like wisdom science. You want to use the botanicals because that it's not necessarily using them one to one. It's not like we were talking about in the chat today, like time, like Eros and I were talking about time, and I can't remember all that. We were talking about a little bit about it, but we talk about it a lot. You don't have to use the exact recipe. It's not about that, but it's about giving the energies, like relating the energies to be the same, like Siete Machos. That clearly was an innovation that came about because of like the multicultural or mixed race or melting pot quality of the Caribbean. That did not come about, simply from the Africans. It's just not reality based. So it came about through syncretism. So that's what I'm saying. You don't necessarily have to follow the recipe like A to Z, but there's a potentiality in formulating using botanicals or minerals or whatever you're using that are directly related to what you want to do. There's a ritual grammar to herbs. This is also why I don't like using the clones, and I'm not putting down what CJ said at all. He knows I agree with him very strongly. I like to do it because I like to be in control. It's very type A, right? And maybe I'm not a type A person, but I'm a type A magician. So for
You have
me,
to be.
well, thank you, CJ. I appreciate that. So thank you. Everybody can hear it. So I'm not like, so, I'm not just being autistic on my own. I'm saying, like, you have to be the master of the ritual space. That's the whole point. So I just like to be very much in control of what is utilized. And now if I fuck up, meaning that I don't really fuck up formulations, I've been doing it for so long. But I'm just saying, if I don't like a formulation, I can change it the next time, or it's on me. It's on me if I don't like something about it. So I just prefer that
Yes.
instead of like outsourcing it to, some factory in the Bronx. That's just me. I'm not saying I never will. I buy herbs from Botanicas, well, I used to all the time. So it's obviously not a problem for me. I'll do it sometimes. Sorry, CJ, go for it.
No, I was just gonna say, when it comes to my magic, I don't know if this is the lazy way or maybe this falls into the type A category, but I like to pick like three really fucking. Oh, can I cuss on here?
Yeah.
Okay, I like to pick three really fucking kick-ass ingredients, like something with some real kick to it. So an example of that would be like rattlesnakes, fangs, or like, and it's not just spooky stuff, but I mean that's just what's coming to mind, or maybe some dried black scorpion. And then I build the spell or the ritual or the amulet around those. I pick these complementary things. Like I have a really big road opening coming up that I've been planning, and I like to plan them out in advance. And so I'm picking things that will go along with the road opening. So I mean, you got your Abre Camino, you got your clove, you got your ginger, and all of that is going to be half road opening and half blockbuster. But I think it's all about finding stuff that complements and doesn't like kind of throw off your flow of your ingredients.
Yeah, totally agree. I've really reduced. I think that this, CJ, because we've talked about it a few times privately and on your episodes. But I've really tried to simplify the way I formulate, like especially if I articulate to other people. Like if I do it for myself, it's one thing, right? Because I have lots of herbs, I have access to lots of herbs. I'm good at formulating. I enjoy formulating. So to
It's
do
fun.
like right, it's fun. 7 to 9 herbs or 13 even. That's fine for me. I don't have a problem doing that. Now, I have actually simplified my practice like to a great degree where I actually use 3 herb combinations as my primary. I think this is a good practice personally. I'm not being self-aggrandizing, but I think it's like what you were saying, CJ, I think this is a great practice. I don't necessarily count the like if I do 3 herbs, I'm talking about 3 herbs. That does not mean I don't add a dirt or saltpeter or um
Yes.
sheds or crab
Yes.
powder or scorpion or whatever it is, that does not mean I don't add those things. I do. But if I'm counting, I'll count the 3 herbs and then the 2 minerals. That's basically how I formulate now.
Well, and the
So
more herbs you add, the more potential you have to fuck up your flow, I think. I
correct.
mean, pick some really solid ones that have some kind of relationship with or you have experience with, and that can work together, like cinnamon. Okay, an easy one is cinnamon, clove, allspice, sassafras. Like all those are going to work together really well, and you're
Good
going to
money,
get paid.
Glenn.
You're
Yeah.
going to get paid. um Add some on the reverse is catnip, um sarsafras, different herb there, or no, sarsaparilla, I'm sorry. And maybe a high john root, and one that I like to play around with is osha, and that's going to get you laid. it's all those different kinds of herbs and their synergy. And you can add in dirts, you can add in stones, I mean animal parts. It all has to be synergized. And then on top of that, if you're working with spirits or you're working with some kind of energy, it all has to be synergized to that. And it's very like autismo friendly,
Yeah,
because you
it's
can go
very autismo.
nuts.
Yeah, don't go. This is the thing. This is a lesson from Young Jin that people can take forward and hopefully not do. Unless you're really good at formulating, it is better to, even for me, yeah, as I said, even for me now, it is just a lot simpler to stick to 3 herbs. Because then, as CJ said, your ritual grammar, like what you're saying, because that's what you're doing. You're saying something with the herbs. You're like with the kanji, like Joshua brought up, like with the Hansa.
Yes.
You're saying something with the herbs. You're commanding the spirits. You're saying something to heaven. You're like amplifying your own magic, whatever. You're in contact with a spirit, whatever it is, you are saying something to them through the herbs. So make sure that your grammar, your syntax actually is coherent. Number one, that doesn't mean you cannot do like spiritual baths. A lot of spiritual baths call for like 7 flowers, siete flores. That's totally fine. You do it for those times. But for the most of the time, you will find most potentiality, I think, in 3 herb blends. So, like, and CJ brought up OSHA, and this might be a good note, and then I'll let you guys plug anything that you want. But we can close after this, unless there's any comments or questions. But OSHA, OSHA is a great root that actually is in TCM, meaning that there is like spiritual uses of it in China. It's not exactly like OSHA. It's very closely related. It's a ligustricum. I forgot the Latin name, but it's very closely related to Angelica, wild Angelica in particular. So if you know anything about TCM, Chinese medicine, you'll know Dong Guai. So the Angelica root. It's actually better than the garden Angelica used in Europe. It's more pungent, it's more fragrant, it's more medicinal. I'm not saying I don't like garden angelica. I'm just saying that if I have the option, I'm going to use Chinese angelica over the garden angelica because it's a lot stronger. OSHA is very similar to that. So it's the opposite though. The TCM variety of OSHA is less potent, it's less pungent, and it's less oily. The OSHA from where CJ's from or where CJ lives, it's very pungent, it's very oily, it's very fragrant.
Smells like celery.
Correct. Because it's related to celery also. So there you go. But yeah, it's a very powerful root, and so it can be used like it's very good for exorcism, but it can also be used like CJ said. It's a bear medicine, so it has those qualities of anyways, we won't get into it, but it has various qualities, just like Angelica. Just like Angelica can be used in various things. It can be used for uncrossing, it can be used for road opening, it can be used for block busting, it can be used for love, it can be used for spiritual protection. I mean, there's a lot of uses for Angelica.
OSHA is the sorry to interrupt you, Jen,
No.
but I say that it is the High John of the Southwest.
Yeah, probably. It probably is. Like, that's probably a good sort of comparison to make, because like High John is like very specific to the south and to like the northern Mexico. So, it's not exactly regional to like where you are or to where I am. But like OSHA grows all the way up to Alberta. So you can make a very good argument that like it's a very important plant that could be included in a lot of materia medica or a lot of materia magica, excuse me. So,
Touche.
and you don't have to apologize for interrupting, CJ. It's a panel show. It's not the gin show, as I like to say.
Hey guys, OSHA showed up at my workplace the other day and fined the place and shut it down. So, just joking.
Well, it can be used for protection, so it's kind of interesting in that way. But
it was a joke.
I know. Anyways, I'm going to let each of you plug thank you all for the three of you for coming and for joining in on the panel. I know it was a little impromptu this week, but hopefully we'll just continue on next week and or whenever we'll do it twice a month. We'll keep with that schedule, but there might be, if we go 4 times a month, that might be the case. But obviously, no one's expected to ever come. It's the come as you will sort of thing, or as your schedule allows. But I'm really happy that you guys came, and I think this was an awesome episode for Ghost Month, where we were all kind of burnt out and sluggish and tired and going through
Yes.
hellish astrology of each of our own. So yeah, I'm really happy. Thank you guys. Appreciate it so much. Josh, why don't you plug, then CJ, then Eros.
Sure. I only had one more joke, and it is
Okay,
for
go for it.
CJ. So I guess since you do a lot of sex spells, does that make you a layman? Didn't. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
That was funny.
I'll be starting King of Cups. We're getting back into the swing of things for this season. Around this time of year, we start recording again. We've got a lot of stuff on our editing room, cutting floor, lots of ideas and episodes we'll be doing. So check us out on YouTube, channel KOK. And then occasionally I'll do spaces on Twitter, but no set schedule, just kind of whenever the whimsy strikes me. So you can find me on there as William Birkin if you're interested in following my schizo posts. So I appreciate you guys having me this evening. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Joshua. Really appreciate it. Obviously, you're probably a member of the group, and you've been a long-standing member of this show. So I'm happy that you came, and hope we just continue like this. I think this is like a really good place to be for all of us. So thank you. And yeah, Joshua has an upcoming episode on Threshold Saints with another co-host on the show, Seth, Bibliomancer. So that will drop in the next month or so. I'm not behind. I swear I'm not behind. I just have like a huge catalog archive. And so, but I've been really trying hard to get everything out so everybody's like happy. But each episode does represent like quite a few hours of editing and like keynote and all of that. Like I time it astrologically. People don't really know how much work goes into the behind the scenes, but it's a lot. And so I do want everybody to be happy with their episodes. And so, it's pressure, but I hope everybody is. And so look out for that. Thank you
That
so much.
episode was a lot of fun. I'm glad you reminded me. That was what was it on Elden Ring and
Elden Ring? Yeah, Elden. We did Elden Rings, and the first one was on Dark Souls.
Yeah, it was a blast, man.
Yeah, it was a really fun episode. So I'll have to tackle it when I tackle it. Thank you, Josh. And okay, CJ, go for it.
Okay, yeah. And I mean, to play into Joshua's awesome layman joke, you can find me on Instagram under Firebloodbone. You can also find me on Substack under the same name, Firebloodbone. I have some more podcasts that shall be coming out with some Grey Lodge members here pretty soon. I want to start attending these lives as much as I can. I really enjoy what you're doing, Jen, with all the speculative anthropology series. And I have some really fun oils that I want to come out with, and I'm terrible about this. I'll promise a product and then my ADHD directs me somewhere else, but I do have some plans to get some actual like physical products out there once my life kind of slows down a little bit. So I'd love to have a coyote oil that I could get into people's hands. But yeah, you can find me on those places, and I really appreciate being allowed to come on to the show tonight.
Of course, you're a member, and you're my friend, and you've been on Saints quite a few times, and hopefully keep coming back. And I didn't know you had episodes in the can with people from the lodge. That's very curious. I'm very excited to hear that. But yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much, CJ. Really appreciate it. And obviously, your continued friendship is meaningful to me. So keep coming as you will. And yeah, I do think the speculative anthropology kind of sets us apart. So I'm glad that you're excited for that. And obviously, we're going to do a series on the spirits of America, like Blackhawk and the Indian spirits, and then we're gonna do the Borderland spirits, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and like Teresita, and what's his name, Jesus Malverde, and all of the and like select grouping of them, and then we're going to do San Mashimon. And maybe we'll do another episode on like a Venezuelan Maria Leonza sort of spiritismo, but we'll see how it all goes. They usually go great, and then but after 3 episodes I need a break, so we'll see. I'll make sure, but we'll make sure that that happens. So thank you so much, CJ. And Eros, of course. Eros had an amazing 2-part episode on the red book called Crimson Grimoire. Part 1 is out, everybody check it out, episode 98. The second part will be episode 108. I usually don't ever tell the numbers before they air, but it's obviously we recorded it in one go. So hopefully there'll be a part 3 in the future. And Eros is like one of my closest online friends and just an amazing person, amazing content creator who I've come to greatly respect and just think the world of. And thank you so much, Eros, for coming and being a part of the lodge and being a part of the spaces. And make sure you plug everything that you want to plug, your Substack, your show, everything. So appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me on. And likewise, I value your friendship a lot. And this was an awesome episode. I feel like it clarified so much for me that I see in like Eastern media, and just I dig it. I dig the spiritual aesthetic and the, I don't know. I'm gonna think about things differently when I watch those things in the future. So this was really fun. Thanks for this. You can find me on YouTube at Erosup, and you can find me on Twitter at ErosTethos. I haven't put out much recently, but that episode that we did was a lot of fun, and I look forward to part 2 and a part 3 for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eros. And yes, so people like CJ, Eros, I don't know, Joshua doesn't really watch anime, but he could, or video games. I know he plays video games, so we'll keep that as an option. But if any of the hosts or any people watching or any people from the lodge, they want to bring their anime questions or like have us take a crack at like interpreting certain like Shinto, Taoist, Buddhist, obviously magic or spiritual ideas, please let us know. Please let me know. Please let any of the co-hosts know, because we'll tackle them. I think that's a really interesting sort of parallel that we are uniquely positioned as like a group and a show to do, is these direct like interventions into Asian metaphysics. So not that we're all Asian practitioners, but that we all can approach it from our we have got multi-perspectival relationships with magic. So I feel like we can do a really good job and try and engage with that. And I think popular culture, obviously the whole thing of the Grey Lodge is sort of like, at least a lot of the early shows were a lot of talking about anime and looking at the canon of what I called the Aeon of the Daughter. So I think it goes perfectly along with everything that we've covered. And I'd love to do anime. So obviously listen to Threshold Saints, because there's lots of anime episodes on there and hopefully more. I did just release an episode with Max Thrax, who is the managing editor of AppCon magazine, Apocalypse Confidential, which is the biggest and probably the most well-known and coolest of the online lit mags for sure. And we did Mad Bull 34, which is a OVA from the late 80s. It's also a manga series, and it's by Kazu. I'm not going to say his name properly. Anyways, it's by the guy who did Lone Wolf and Cub. So if you like Lone Wolf and Cub, you'll probably like this episode. So thank you guys so much. We did a really long one tonight, 3 fucking hours. Wow. Can't believe it. Just like the old days. This is exactly how we used to do it. Like just like blaze right through a couple hours on a Friday night Gnostic Mass. So I'm Jin the Ninja. I host a show called Threshold Saints. This is the Plus Ultra presents the Grey Lodge Friday night Gnostic Mass Ghost Month in Review. Yes, I have to change the keynote as it appeared on this episode, but it won't be because I'm going to change it, obviously, on YouTube. But it will have Joshua updated in the credits. So everybody will know that he was here and credited, at least for the episode. I credit everyone who's a part of the lodge. So, our part of our circle, our host. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. Everybody have a great night. Thank you to the lodge, to Cassandra, to Frau Blucher, to Vanessa for coming. Obviously, that is what makes the show, like, that's what actually makes the show, is like everybody in discourse and dialogue and in perception with each other. So just close on saying, like, meditate, spiritual and psychic self-defense, paramount importance. Don't believe too much of what you see on the timeline, not because it's not true, but because the greatest lie can often be found in the truth. So that's a paradox. You have to resolve that on your own, in your own mind. And, try and be karmically generative and, virtuous in your own way, whether you're an outlaw or a saint. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. What else? Everybody have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay lit, and, prayers up. So keep your song offerings burning bright. And, don't forget the spirits and the ancestors and the ghosts. They exist too. That doesn't mean worship them, but it does mean that they are extant in the world, and be mindful of that. And, it's okay to offer them a little incense and a little prayer to heaven once in a while. So we'll end there. Thank you guys so much. And yeah, follow the show, like and subscribe.